Barbarians are ruthless, brutal fighters feared by everyone. They inhabit a frozen desolation where survival itself is torture. The land is overrun with deadly creatures lurking everywhere. Their diet consists solely of slaughtered beasts. These people possess absurd strength, enough to rip massive monsters apart using nothing but their hands. Their presence alone is horrifying to the point that just seeing them can shatter a person's sanity. The protagonist awakens inside the body of one such barbarian. In short, he turns into an overpowered monster himself, capable of obliterating beasts and even shattering entire mountains with a single strike. He spends a long stretch of time living among the barbarians, until their stupidity finally pushes him over the edge. At that point, he resolves to find at least one rational human. But anyone entering those frozen monster lands would be insane. By chance, a noble carriage with guards crosses the snowy waste. A mercenary complains about the cold until the blonde captain snaps back, telling him to bundle up or die freezing. Another guard protests, claiming the journey is madness regardless of the promised reward. The captain shuts them down, reminding them they accepted the job willingly. One mercenary fires back that he never imagined conditions would be this horrific. Inside the carriage, a butler cautiously speaks to the noblewoman of the Akasha household, asking if she is unharmed. Mylana calmly answers that she is fine. As a guard freezes outside, the butler considers the complaints disrespectful. Mylana softens his stance, reminding him the escorts volunteered. He even suggests letting them warm up inside briefly. The elderly butler firmly refuses, warning her again about the dangers of the snowy wasteland. When Mylana asks if he refers to the monsters, the butler recounts a tale of an emperor who sought to rule the world. To do so, the emperor marched into the white wasteland with countless soldiers, and remained there for decades pursuing conquest. When his empire fell, he returned alone wielding only a staff, having lost every man and speaking like a lunatic. He claimed the land was filled with monsters, yet insisted the greatest threat was something else entirely. The true terror of the wasteland was the barbarians. Butler adds that it is merely a legend and not confirmed fact. Mylana counters that many monsters from the tale have already been proven real. They note that no confirmed sightings of barbarians have occurred, though a strange man named Jerome spread endless stories about them. Suddenly, the captain orders everyone to halt. He spots a lone figure approaching from the distance. The shape is faint, barely visible through the white haze. He announces that there is both good news and bad news. The good news is that the figure appears small. The bad news is he cannot tell if it is human or a legendary barbarian. Without warning, the barbarian steps close enough to be seen clearly. He casually explains he was wandering after getting tired of the others. Petal admits surprise at meeting outsiders and cheerfully greets them. He asks if the carriage belongs to merchants, and if they are hired guards. The captain confirms his assumption. The ashen barbarian suggests turning back, joking that he doubts they would actually listen. Petal then asks if someone important is inside the carriage. Everyone freezes, too terrified to answer him. The barbarian casually offers to work as a mercenary. The captain asks him to repeat what he just said. Petal calmly explains he wants to escort them across the wasteland. The captain is stunned that a legendary barbarian wants paid work, and asks if he is hostile. Petal jokes that if he were, they would already be dead. The captain turns to Mylana to confirm she heard everything. Requesting her decision, she asks about their odds if they fought him. The captain admits he would not even consider such a battle. Mylana orders him to accept the barbarian's offer. The blonde captain relays the approval to Petal, informing him that the noblewoman has accepted his terms. Petal beams with joy. His smile alone is enough to make everyone tremble in fear. He tells them to relax and requests to meet the leader directly. The captain grows tense and warns Petal not to try anything reckless. The mercenaries argue they should restrain the barbarian. Captain scolds them, reminding them the employer already agreed. Butler panics at the news, but Petal politely asks permission to enter the carriage. Petal sits beside the uneasy butler and assures everyone he means no harm. Lady Mylana also appears visibly nervous. Still, she greets him kindly as Petal comments on the surprising warmth inside. He remarks that maintaining such heat must be extremely difficult. Mylana explains that magic is responsible for it, which excites the former otaku immensely. Petal warns that survival chances are slim, which is why he offers his protection. He adds a single condition, instantly tightening the atmosphere. Mylana stays composed and asks what he wants in return. The barbarian grins slyly, requesting only knowledge of the world beyond the frozen lands. Mylana finds the demand strangely unexpected. Petal assures her it is a fair exchange. Sweat runs down her face as she realizes refusal is impossible. She agrees to the deal without alternatives. The butler disapproves, while Petal asks the lady's name. She introduces herself softly as a noble of House Akasha. Petal responds with thanks for allowing him to join their journey. Back on Earth, he once dreamed of a fantasy life that somehow became reality. He was isekai'd into the body of an ashen barbarian trapped in snow. With no time to question it, survival against endless monsters consumed him. endure, he united the barbarians into a clan and led them. Years slipped by, destroying every plan he had to escape. Returned when a system appeared promising freedom through quests, though it felt like fate had imprisoned him. Throughout the years, outsiders occasionally wandered into the wasteland. From their stories, he finally learned that the world beyond the cursed snowfields truly overflowed with magic and fantasy, exactly like he had dreamed. After realizing that, he doubles down on his efforts and clears quests one after another without rest. Determined to escape the frozen hell, he also understands how priceless outside knowledge really is. That realization pushes him to bargain with Mylena, offering protection in exchange for information. Till this moment, everyone he encountered either panicked or drew weapons, seeing him as nothing but a monster. He is genuinely relieved to have a normal talk, since the barbarians he lived with were brainless and speaking to a sane human soothes his nerves. Suddenly, Cottle casually asks if the carriage is carrying weapons. Mylena questions how he could possibly know that. He explains the metallic clenching gave it away, and asks if a war is raging beyond the frozen lands. Mylena's face darkens as she confirms an ongoing war between the Empire and the Kingdom. She adds that the Empire is vast and aggressively expanding, though the Kingdom is barely holding its defenses. According to her, this resistance is thanks to the Sword Master and the hero guarding the borders. Curious, Cottle asks what sort of powers those individuals possess. Shocked, Mylena asks if he truly knows nothing about mysteries, and he explains he has never left the snowfields. He admits her knowledge is limited, as well, but confirms that mystery is a genuine power in this world. Only a small number can wield it, and their mastery determines which of the 5 strength ranks they receive. Lowest rank belongs to those who can merely sense mystery. Above them are those capable of actively using it, and finally, those who fully manifest mana or aura are top tier, earning titles like knights, mages, or spirit summoners. She explains that ranks beyond that surpass human understanding, and are called transcendents, with the Sword Master believed to be among them. As for the hero, rumors say they possess power capable of influencing the world itself. Mylena adds that even a third-rate, someone barely sensing mystery, is still considered formidable. Hearing this, the Ashen Barbarian eagerly asks if he could meet such people. Cottle has lost track of how long he has been trapped in this frozen curse, but his desperation to escape has never been stronger than it is now. Staring at his reflection, he silently vows to escape no matter the cost. Mylena then cautiously asks if he truly is a barbarian. Cottle confirms it, wondering if his identity is already known. She brings up the ancient legend and recounts the story of the Emperor. Cottle interrupts her mid-explanation, grinning as he claims he actually remembers that Emperor visiting long ago. He says he thought the man was simply insane, leaving Mylena completely confused. Cottle bluntly tells her that the legend might be more truth than fiction. He then questions why they chose such a perilous route while holding so many weapons. Mylena's expression darkens slightly as she quietly confesses that her family is drowning in debt. She explains generations of trade ended in ruin after rivals sabotaged them, leaving this journey as their final hope to save the family name. Piecing everything together, Cottle deduces that she plans to sell the weapons to the kingdom. Curious, Mylena asks how he came to that conclusion. Cottle reasons that a kingdom under siege would desperately buy weapons at any price, which makes risking this deadly route a logical gamble. He further notes that avoiding safer paths suggests the two nations share a border. Mylena stares at him in disbelief, as barbarians were supposed to be mindless brutes. Watching his sharp reasoning makes her question whether he is truly a barbarian at all. Suddenly, the carriage lurches violently as a loud crash echoes outside, making it clear that something dangerous has arrived. They leap out with weapons drawn and find a massive sewer monster with blood-red eyes. The horrifying sight freezes them, and the blonde captain barely whispers that it is a black slime. Cottle calmly asks if it really is a black slime. Mylena confirms that matches the descriptions she has read. She explains that past survivors recorded these monsters, and black slimes are clearly listed among them. The blue-haired lady then asks if Cottle knows this creature. Smiling cheerfully, he says they are chewy and surprisingly tasty. Disgusted, she asks if he seriously eats such things. He retorts by asking if she wants to try it herself, telling her to catch one if she does, which she quickly refuses. As if on cue, the monster advances toward them. Panic erupts, and the frightened lady calls out to Cottle, who remains unfazed. His face shows no emotion at all. He reminds them that their agreement was protection only in real danger. Shaking with fear, Mylena asks what he means by that. Cottle smirks and says they should manage this level of monster themselves, as he wants to gauge their abilities. The slime looms directly in front of the guards. The blonde captain orders everyone to raise their shields. A mercenary immediately follows the command. The shield barely holds for a moment before the man is violently pushed backward. A ponytailed fighter lunges at the creature, is thrown aside, dropping his weapon and coughing blood. The captain shouts that the slime can only move straight, ordering them to spread out and coordinate their attacks. Hearing this, the green-cloaked man leaps in and lands a solid strike. He follows up with another blow that visibly damages the monster. Seeing it weaken, the captain slashes it once more and commands them to locate its core, as surface attacks are useless. Through repeated strikes, they finally uncover the core and shatter it with a decisive blow. Slime collapses and melts into the snow. At first stunned, the guards soon realize they have won and celebrate their first victory here. Milena smiles in relief, but before they can rest, massive white bear appears, prompting someone to shout to target its neck. Everyone attacks simultaneously, bringing it down quickly. As someone remarks the wasteland tales might be exaggerations, the leader silences them, warning they are only halfway to their destination. The green-hooded man questions Coddle's strength, wondering if it is all legend. He claims Coddle is exploiting them, and insists they should test his ability somehow. The blue-haired lady listens carefully and asks what they mean by testing. The guards gather near the carriage and request Milena's permission to speak. The hooded man confidently states they are risking their lives to fulfill her request. Milena steps out, thanking them and reminding them they stood by her when no one else dared. The hooded man interrupts her again with another question, asking whether Coddle truly deserves special treatment, since he has yet to fight even once. Milena says she understands their concerns and looks uncertainly at the captain, who denies responsibility, insisting the decision was not his. Coddle watches with a confident grin, stepping out and asking if they truly want to see his strength, though someone says now is not the time. Coddle emerges fully, his massive muscular body visible, warning that another threat is approaching. A dark shadow with glowing eyes appears behind them, declaring it will feast on weak mortals today. As the porters slowly turn back, they are met with a massive serpent bearing glowing red eyes, bearing razor teeth while its long tongue dangles, as it taunts them to struggle for a better taste, claiming that their resistance will only make them more delicious. Milena panics and clamps her hands over her ears. The mercenaries shut their eyes tightly, frozen stiff with fear. Coddle steps forward, radiating intense violet energy, warning the snake to retreat since these people now fall under his protection. The white snake grows uneasy upon sensing Coddle and questions his presence, reminding him of the snowfield laws about territory intrusion. Coddle dismisses the warning outright and tells the snake to stop posturing. The serpent bellows loudly, attempting to assert dominance. It snarls that Coddle has no right to address it so casually, but Coddle refuses to entertain the argument. He lunges forward without another word, delivering a crushing punch meant to teach the oversized snake its place. The impact resounds violently, shaking the ground beneath them and stunning everyone in the area. Milena cries out in concern, asking if Lord Coddle is unharmed. He answers calmly, saying the fight will end quickly and he will rejoin them soon. He charges again, now engulfed in an overwhelming and unnatural surge of power, and slams the arrogant snake into the earth with a single decisive blow. Later, Coddle relaxes inside the carriage, while the others shiver outside apologizing, and he remarks that caution towards strangers is only natural. Even so, the balance of power has clearly shifted, to the point that even the butler must now stand in the snow. Settling in, Coddle casually asks why the girl chose to travel alone this far, despite fully understanding the risks involved. She confesses she is the eldest daughter of Lady Bellica, a concubine of Lord Kisaka Kasha. Her mother was brought into the family for political reasons and discarded once she was no longer useful. She explains they were never treated as true family, but more like expendable servants. Though she had not intended to reveal so much, the words spill out uncontrollably. She admits she accepted this grueling journey to prove her worth and leave a mark within the family. Coddle grins, praising her ambition and sharp thinking, adding that she is a bit greedy as well. Before the talk continues, the mercenary captain suddenly announces they have arrived, declaring that Greenland lies just ahead. As preparations to part begin, the blue-haired woman thanks Coddle, explains she will return through the Empire, and listens as he asks about her plans. Before leaving, she recalls something he said earlier about her intelligence, which he repeats without hesitation. He then outlines her entire strategy flawlessly, connecting every hidden detail, explaining that she aims to secure her place and eventually dominate the family. He silently acknowledges his words. To Coddle, her story feels familiar, a concubine's child striving to be acknowledged by the main bloodline, a scenario he had seen countless times in fiction during his former life. He realizes his insight far exceeds expectations and invites him to stand beside her one day, wondering if she could harness his strength. Coddle gently refuses her offer, explaining that he still has unresolved matters to attend to. In response, she hands him a pendant, asking him to visit her if he ever reaches the outside world. Coddle accepts the gift with a warm smile, calling it a simple token. While the butler bows respectfully in farewell, they part ways, each hoping destiny will reunite them someday. 5 long years pass. Coddle finally completes his 784th quest, earning the official right to leave the snowfields and step into the world he had yearned for. He breathes in the scent of grass and listens to flowing water, feeling as though paradise has welcomed him after enduring countless years of frozen torment. He turns back toward the icy plains, cursing the land and praying he never returns. His mind fills with dreams of enjoying this magical world, the hope that kept him alive. To him, the land beyond the snow was a place where wonders are ordinary. His eyes settle on the first true village he has ever seen. He recalls suggesting shelters to the barbarians, who instead slept and dug snow like animals, having deeply missed the order of human society. He wonders how best to introduce himself to civilization. Choosing courtesy, he walks calmly toward the village. Meanwhile, an elderly elf announces to his people that this land is now their home, telling them to begin unpacking. An elf questions whether the location is truly safe. The elder explains it is remote enough to avoid all humans. He adds that the nearby snowfields deter any intruders. He claims monsters are no concern since no one has ever returned from there. He boasts of a powerful illusion barrier forged by ancient magic, confident it will keep all outsiders away. He further reassures them that their mighty elven queen can handle any threat. At that exact moment, Cuddle casually walks through the absolute barrier, as if it were fog. He briefly feels resistance like a cobweb, ignores it, and keeps going. That is when he notices a young elf girl nearby, who looks as though she has lost everything. He frantically looks around in distress, and the instant she sees the towering human greeting her warmly, her mind blanks completely, and she collapses instantly. Cuddle catches her, confused by the sudden reaction. He reasons that returning her to the village might earn goodwill, believing gentle elves might welcome him for helping her. Blushing at the thought, he carries her back. However, panic erupts the moment the villagers see him. The girl's mother sobs hysterically, as if seeing a nightmare. The elder freezes, silently questioning his confidence in the barrier before snapping back. He shouts that the barrier has failed and urgently calls for the queen, who is away on patrol. Cuddle tries to explain that he means no harm, but threats fly as the elder imagines countless hostile scenarios. Hearing the human tracked or prepared to raid them, accused of kidnapping, Cuddle struggles to clear the misunderstanding. He gently wakes the young girl, still crying, and urges her to return to her parents. Yet in her eyes, he is nothing more than a terrifying monster. He runs away in tears, leaving Cuddle standing there utterly stunned. Since he genuinely believed his appearance was fairly respectable, he keeps trying to explain to the stubborn elves that he means no harm. But the elderly leader instead claims the hostage has been freed and shouts an order for everyone to attack immediately. Cuddle remains frozen in disbelief as his words fail to reach them, despite their famously sharp hearing. To him, the elves suddenly seem far more brutal than expected, making every peaceful legend he once heard about them feel painfully inaccurate. Still, he convinces himself it is simply a natural reaction to an unknown intruder. Arrows pour down endlessly, yet every one of them harmlessly bounces off his body. Then, with a casual clap, Cuddle releases an overwhelming shockwave that sends several elves flying backward, tossed through the air like debris caught in a gale. The old elven leader watches in mute shock. Cuddle once again insists he has no intention of harming anyone. He briefly worries that his display may have worsened their fear, and considers retreating before things spiral further. Suddenly, a wave of heat warns him of a flaming arrow speeding toward him from behind, its fiery glow cutting through the icy air. The Elven Queen has returned from her patrol. Assuming a grave threat, the Leaf Clan's ruler Marsalia Haitian Caracia demands to know the cause of the destruction. Without hesitation, the old elf points straight at Cuddle, accusing him of launching an unprovoked assault on their village. Cuddle keeps pleading for a chance to explain himself, but his uninjured state unsettles both Marsalia and Elder Deplay. The queen sneers, voicing her disgust toward humans, then rushes him confidently, believing she can easily overpower him. Cuddle wonders if they are ignoring him on purpose, suspecting long-standing hatred rather than fear fuels their aggression. He recalls that in the snowfields, words only mattered after strength was proven. As that thought settles, Queen unleashes her attack, shaped like a massive dragon formed of power. Cuddle effortlessly punches it away, the shockwave ripping through the space surrounding the queen, leaving him debating whether he should start restraining himself. Queen crashes hard into the ground. Realizing he surpasses even transcendence, she grits her teeth and orders her people to flee, choosing to stay behind to delay him. She shouts that she recognizes his strength, but still calls him human, vowing to stop whatever sinister purpose she believes brought him here. Cuddle is ignored once more, realizing the situation has spiraled beyond control. As her last stand, the queen summons a blazing bull spirit named Pio, confident the summon will eliminate the intruder. Cuddle, however, lights up with excitement at the sight, having grown tired of grotesque monsters and the snowfields. This majestic beast feels refreshingly impressive. He admires the flaming bull in awe. Marsalia immediately orders the spirit to kill him. The summon radiates the power of a high-tier fire entity, ancient, proud, and vastly stronger than common spirits. Marsalia knows such a summon exceeds her own limits and required aid from another tribe. Never expecting she would meet it under circumstances like this, she now commands it to act. The firebolt calmly asks if its task is simply to erase the human. Even it hesitates upon seeing Cuddle up close, wondering aloud if he is truly human, as this is its first encounter with such a being. Cuddle is genuinely impressed by the summon's adorable yet dignified appearance. Meanwhile, the queen tells Pigo that this human trespassed on sacred land and must be killed. Hearing this, Pigo decides to incinerate the intruder as punishment for offending the elven race. Cuddle stands still, unfazed, mostly confused by the entire situation. Pigo prepares to charge and rushes straight toward him. Cuddle makes no effort to dodge or defend. The collision triggers a massive explosion, causing the queen to assume he has perished. To her horror, he stops the raging spirit with one hand. Used to battling wild beasts, Cuddle feels oddly comfortable fighting such a form, allowing him to strike freely. His punch slams into Pigo with force resembling a volcanic eruption beneath their feet, though in truth, it represents only a fraction of his power. Once the dust settles, the queen barely survives and stands trembling, overwhelmed by the power gap. She drops to her knees and begs him to spare her clan. Cuddle calmly repeats that he is not their enemy, leaving her utterly stunned. After a longer discussion, she finally understands his intentions were never hostile and apologizes for judging him too quickly, realizing they nearly condemned the man who safely returned one of their children. Cuddle politely accepts the apology, noting their fear of humans was understandable, though it saddened him no one listened. Still confused, the queen asks if he truly is not one of the humans hunting them. He explains this is his first time seeing elves, as they do not exist in the snowfields. The mention of the snowfield surprises her. He adds that outsiders call him the Ashen Barbarian of the wasteland. The queen is shocked that anyone could survive such a place. He wonders aloud if others might escape the wasteland as he did. Cuddle admits he doubts anyone else could manage it. He believes the wasteland follows strict rules that even monsters cannot break, except through his quests, making his escape a rare anomaly. The queen exhales in relief, while Cuddle casually asks if her cute summon is alright after being split in half. She reassures him that spirits simply return to their realm when defeated. She then offers to repay him somehow, acknowledging her people's rudeness. After brief consideration, Cuddle asks whether other races can form spirit contracts. She explains that it is usually impossible, though humans with strong natural affinity sometimes succeed. She suggests he visit Elfo Sagrado if he wishes to try the secret elven homeland where their lord resides, and may assist him. Excited, Cuddle asks if a human would truly be allowed to enter such a holy place. She explains that with her personal recommendation it should be fine, as long as he keeps everything strictly confidential. Deep down, the Elf Queen reflects that Elfo Sagrado is the ultimate dream destination for elven scholars. Letting a human near such a sacred place is extremely dangerous, as its value surpasses even their lives, and its location is never disclosed. Despite the risk, she chooses to place her trust in him, and hands him a softly glowing crystal to carry along. She explains that the Elf Lord will judge whether he is worthy, yet she believes he will succeed and sincerely wishes him luck. She formally introduces herself as Queen Marcelia Carohia of the Leaf Tribe and asks for his name. He answers as Cuddle the Barbarian, confirms the direction, and then bursts into a sprint through the forest toward his destination, rapidly approaching the border of the Arkan territory governed by the Kingdom of Gehen. The guards on duty panic when they spot a massive dust cloud racing toward them at unbelievable speed. They hastily prepare themselves for combat. Cuddle greets them politely, saying he is pleased to meet them. Hearing his voice, the shaken guards immediately recognize his gray hair and the prominent scar running across his chest, identifying him as the notorious Ashen Barbarian. They warned him to halt immediately or face an attack if he moves closer. Cuddle calmly tells them to relax, explaining he has no hostile intent. Guards demand to know what he wants. He simply points toward the city wall, which understandably leaves them puzzled. He clarifies that he only wishes to visit briefly and means nothing more. Inside the Knight Captain's office, the captain asks if his goal is merely to pass through. Cuddle replies that he plans to stay for a time, though even he does not know how long, then gives his name. Asked for proof of identity, he admits he has none, until he recalls the crest Mylna gave him. He presents it, and casually asks if that will suffice. The guard fails to recognize it and questions what it represents. Cuddle explains it belongs to House Akasha, prompting the captain to note they are a merchant family from Dunian, which Cuddle confirms. The captain remarks that the house has been rapidly rising since its new leader took over. Although the crest appears authentic, the guard says it cannot fully verify him since it is foreign. Even so, he allows Cuddle to proceed, on the condition that his threat level is first evaluated. He explains that Cuddle must join 3 others to clear a nearby dungeon as a temporary party. Cuddle finds the requirement trivial, and agrees without objection. The guard adds they must report everything that occurs inside, which makes Cuddle realize the party is meant to observe one another for suspicion. The guard looks shocked by his insight, and asks if he is truly a barbarian, admitting he believed barbarians were simple brutes and Cattle feels different. With matters settled, the guard tells him to move along. Elsewhere, an old man named Alessandro Tyrannus, a self-proclaimed paladin, complains bitterly about dungeon crawling with a thief. The thief Casson snaps back, accusing Tyrannus of holding a grudge over being scammed years ago. That remark enrages Tyrannus, who fumes that a petty thief dares insult a paladin. Casson retorts that Tyrannus cannot be a real paladin if he ended up here. He mocks him as a nobody clinging to a ridiculous title. Tyrannus visibly bristles with anger and draws his sword toward the thief. Casson scoffs, questioning whether battered armor will save him. Just as the fight is about to erupt, the cleric Hayes politely intervenes, forcing them to stand down. Hayes quietly wonders if entering a dungeon with these two is wise. Since 4 people are required, they still await one more member. Suddenly, the door swings open. The guard announces the final member has arrived, ignoring Casson's joke and telling him to see for himself. Cattle enters the room, radiating a calm yet oppressive presence. All 3 freeze as fear crawls up their spines while he walks in casually. Smiling brightly despite his massive build, he greets his new teammates. While they struggle to process his presence, the guard excuses himself, telling them to sort things out before he returns. Cattle suggests introductions and introduces himself as Cattle the Barbarian. He turns to Casson, who nearly chokes while admitting he is a thief. Tyrannus declares himself a paladin, which excites Cattle until he hears Tyrannus cannot use holy powers. Tyrannus quickly clarifies he is a special case without divine abilities. The woman shyly introduces herself as Hayes, a cleric of the god Colossia. Cattle asks why she seems hesitant despite being a cleric. She explains that Colossia governs lies and deception, making her faith unpopular. As their conversation continues, Captain returns and tells them it is time to depart. The party follows him to the dungeon entrance, where he explains it has 3 floors dominated by undead. Their task is to clear it fully and return with proof. Kettle casually starts the raid by asking Casson for a plan. Nervous, Casson awkwardly addresses him as Sir Cattle. Cattle tells him to drop formalities since they are equals as teammates. Relieved, Casson agrees to act normally. He assigns Cattle and Tyrannus to the front, himself to traps, and Hayes to support. Cattle is impressed by the clear formation, and the others agree. With roles decided, they move forward, into the dungeon depths. Hayes quietly notes how unnaturally dark it feels. Casson grows wary due to the lack of visible traps. Suddenly, he orders everyone to stop, sensing monsters nearby. Bone fragments litter the floor, remnants of skeletons that attack when approached. Casson suspects the guards lied, and are using the dungeon to eliminate suspects. Cattle pretends not to understand. Though Casson explains skeletons keep moving even after losing limbs. Their bone bodies give them extremely high defense. He tells Hayes to prepare her spells, signals Tyrannus to brace his shield, and warns Cattle this will be difficult. Casson explains they must distract skeletons so he can strike their weak necks. As Cattle steps forward, toward one of the skeletons, it suddenly rises, but instead of attacking, Cattle slaps it effortlessly, reducing it to dust instantly. Everyone stares in stunned silence. Cattle turns to Casson with a wide, cheerful grin. He insists he was right about them collapsing if you strike the head, while poor Casson can only laugh awkwardly, completely baffled by the statement, because that interpretation is absolutely not what he meant by aiming for the head. Skeletons consist of dense bone strengthened further by dungeon mana, making it nearly impossible for an ordinary swordsman to cleave one apart in a single blow. The practical method to defeat them is hammering the neck joints until they break, and crushing a skull outright should be beyond normal physical limits. Casson was already aware the barbarian was powerful, but this display far exceeded anything he had imagined. He now honestly wonders whether Cattle is even human, as everyone stands frozen, staring at the heap of scattered dust. Meanwhile, the man himself casually tells them it is time to move on. A little shaken, they rush toward him as soon as he gives the signal, though he calmly says there is no need to hurry, which Casson agrees with. Tyrannus and Hayes, however, silently pray to survive. The group continues onward through the dungeon. Suddenly Cattle notices a skull resting on the floor. With several more skeletons scattered nearby, the other 3 tense up immediately, expecting that this time they might actually need to step in and help. At that moment, Cattle turns around and politely asks them for a small favor, leaving all 3 puzzled about what help he could possibly need from them. He explains he wants to handle the skeletons alone because he wishes to test something, and Casson shrugs it off while Hayes and Tyrannus also approve. They back away, curious about what experiment he has in mind. Cattle gives them a brief nod of thanks. As one skeleton slowly rises to its feet, Cattle watches with intense curiosity, marveling at how its body assembles and wondering aloud about its construction. The skeleton lunges forward with a powerful slash, aiming its sword at him. Cattle calmly traps the blade between 2 fingers without effort, snaps it apart, as if it were nothing more than a dry branch. He casually asks what the skeleton plans to do next, but it shows no hesitation. It leaps into the air, and launches another attack. Cattle smoothly sidesteps the blow, and seizes the skeleton by the arm. He asks the frail creature what might happen if he did this, and he smashes the arm straight into the ground, reducing it instantly into fine dust. The skeleton remains standing, staring blankly at the missing limb in obvious confusion. After a pause, it tries to regain its composure. It kicks the fallen sword into the air with flair, and catches it with its other hand, fighting desperately for its undead existence. Unfortunately for it, Cuddle's relentless teasing is far from over. The skeleton charges forward once again, but the barbarian grabs its remaining arm and tears it free as well, turning it to dust just like the first one. Even then, the stubborn skeleton refuses to fall, and wildly flails its broken limbs. Cuddle grabs it, and completely pulverizes what remains of its right arm, impressed by its ability to compensate, and its surprising intelligence. The rest of the party can only watch in absolute silence, feeling a strange mix of pity and disbelief at the skeleton being utterly humiliated. Pace feels a cold shiver crawl down her spine as she witnesses the scene. Cassin and Tyrannus look as though their spirits have left their bodies entirely. In that moment, they finally understand what a true barbarian looks like, as Cuddle stands before the shattered skeleton wearing a proud, unsettling grin. The others watch in horror as Cuddle uses sheer strength to rip the skeleton's head free, and tosses it carelessly onto the ground. Looking completely unhinged, he finds it amusing that the creature cannot move without its head, then crushes the skull under his boot like a villain. The sight sends chills through the others as Cuddle casually apologizes for the delay after behaving like a full-blown demon. Terrified, Cassin hurriedly assures him it is no problem at all, then politely asks Sir Cuddle to take as much time as he needs. Cuddle simply nods, oblivious to their fear, and remarks that he is glad they are being so courteous. He then suggests going deeper, and the others instantly agree, nodding like captives fearing for their lives. After spending some more time exploring, they eventually arrive at a staircase leading down to the dungeon's second floor. Once they step onto the new level, Cassin proposes that they take a short rest before pushing forward. Cuddle agrees, saying it would be better for everyone to pause and recover for a bit. Hearing this, Cassin is secretly thrilled that the mighty barbarian has graciously accepted his humble suggestion. While they take their break, three sit together in one corner while Cuddle quietly rests in another, with an uneasy silence filling the room. Suddenly, Cuddle mentions he has a question about the dungeon, instantly putting everyone on edge as they ask what he wants to know. He looks slightly embarrassed but admits that his understanding of dungeons is extremely limited. Hayes panics briefly and reassures him that curiosity is a virtue, adding that she herself also values knowledge greatly. Given permission to continue, Cuddle notes that this dungeon is located very close to the territory, and asks whether there is any danger of monsters escaping from within. Hayes calmly explains that monsters normally do not leave dungeons, though rare exceptions exist, and are quickly reported and handled. Cassin joins in, explaining that dungeons are considered a type of natural disaster, and that they come in many forms. Some appear as caves while others manifest as towers, yet most of them strangely emerge near densely populated regions. That explanation helps Cuddle understand why this dungeon exists here. Hayes adds that the local lord evaluates the threat level and sends guards or mercenaries, though outsiders like them are sometimes hired as well. After hearing their explanations, Cuddle finds it fascinating that dungeons never form inside territories, and Cassin confirms they always appear at a fixed distance away. With excitement written all over his face, Cuddle asks if clearing a dungeon comes with rewards. Hayes confirms there is a boss on the final floor, and defeating it yields valuable rewards, especially since this dungeon is large and its boss formidable. Hearing that, Cuddle grins broadly and mutters that it feels just like a game. When the nun asks what he means by that, he dodges the question, saying he was talking to himself, then asks who actually creates these dungeons. The question catches them completely off guard. Hayes replies that no one creates them, as they are considered natural occurrences. Cuddle counters that there are too many strange details for that explanation to fully make sense. He points out how they always appear near people, almost as if inviting exploration and tempting adventurers with treasure. Seems far too intentional to be purely natural. Hayes admits that his reasoning actually sounds very logical. She confesses she had never considered it that way before, and Cassin agrees it feels suspicious. He adds that since it is taught as a fundamental truth of their world, he never thought to question it. The thief, meanwhile, wonders how this barbarian is perceptive enough to doubt established truths. After all, barbarians are supposed to be mindless brutes, yet Cuddle clearly defies that stereotype. Cuddle finds their perspective genuinely intriguing, and asks whether everyone feels rested enough to continue. Once they confirm they are ready, he leads them further inside to resume their exploration. After wandering for a long time, they unexpectedly come across a treasure chest. Cassin explains that it is a legitimate dungeon chest, but it can only be claimed if someone manages to unlock it. The thief studies the chest, and thinks that opening something so well made would require a master lockpicker. Since someone that skilled would never be stuck in a dungeon like this, he assumes the chest must be abandoned. Cuddle tells him to try opening it anyway, reminding him that dealing with locks is literally his role as a thief. He emphasizes that it is the thief's sole responsibility on the team, causing Kassan to break into a nervous sweat. He worries that if he truly had such skill, he would not be wasting his time in a low-tier dungeon. In the end, he is nothing more than a discount ninja, a nobody scraping by at the very bottom of society, someone the Thieves Guild never even bothered to acknowledge. Yet he cannot bring himself to admit that weakness with the Barbarian placing such high hopes on him. If he openly says he is incapable, then all of Coddle's enthusiasm would instantly twist into crushing disappointment. And disappointing a Barbarian could very well leave him ending up like that unfortunate skeleton. In the end, he resolves to attempt it anyway. He pulls out his lockpicking tools as Coddle peers over his shoulder with the pure excitement of a child watching a master at work. With the Barbarian hovering close and examining everything, Kassan desperately recalls every lockpicker he ever observed while hauling goods for thieves. He fully locks in, convinced that failing to open this chest is practically a death sentence. That overwhelming pressure awakens a hidden ability known as Cry of the Soul. After some time passes, Kassan hears a faint click and Coddle assumes something must have snapped. Instead, the chest lid slowly creaks open, and the relief is so strong that Kassan nearly breaks down in tears. Hayes can hardly believe her eyes, since she always heard only elite thieves could open such chests, and seeing it firsthand makes her think Kassan is incredibly skilled. Coddle is also pleasantly surprised and praises him sincerely for the impressive result. Kassan pretends the success was intentional, though in truth he has no idea how he managed it. He once believed he was living his best possible life, but witnessing his own potential makes him question whether he had been lying to himself all along. As Kassan quietly spirals inward, Coddle casually asks about the value of the loot, and Hayes explains it could comfortably feed a family for a month while still allowing a rather luxurious lifestyle. Hearing that explanation, Coddle breaks into a satisfied smile, tells Kassan to keep watch over the valuable spoils. Kassan removes the contents from the chest, nearly panicking when he is caught trying to sneak a few items into his own bag. When questioned, he awkwardly denies anything unusual, insisting nothing is wrong. Some time later, they stumble upon a random pile of scattered bones littering the floor. Judging by the remains, there seem to be 4 skeletons, so the Barbarian declares he will handle 3 himself, and leave the final one for the rest of the group. Everyone agrees, quietly wondering whether this even qualifies as a proper fight. As soon as they step into range of the bone pile, skeletons begin pulling themselves together, letting out eerie roars as they face the party. Everyone braces themselves for combat. Coddle confidently shouts for the skeletons to come at him. Kassan rushes forward first and lands a solid opening strike. As the other skeletons attempt to swarm him, Coddle casually grabs them with his massive arms and restrains them from behind, telling them not to interfere, because he wants to see how his companions handle a fight on their own. Kassan lunges again and slashes at the skeleton's neck, but the blow still fails to finish it. The skeleton retaliates with a counter-attack, which Tyrannus blocks head-on with his sturdy shield. At the same time, Hayes enchants Tyrannus' sword with Shadow of Confusion, allowing him to strike the skeleton's nape with renewed force. Thanks to the per se blow, a fracture spreads across the thick neck bone. Witnessing such coordination from a newly formed party impresses Coddle, who notes how rare it is for strangers to work together so seamlessly. Satisfied, he crushes the remaining 3 skeletons into magical dust, and settles in to watch now that the distractions are gone. As the others notice him calmly observing, they immediately realize he is evaluating them and that any sign of weakness would be disastrous. Determined to prove themselves, all 3 rush the last skeleton together as it stands helplessly awaiting its inevitable demise. Once the final skeleton falls, the trio collapses together for some well-earned rest. While casually gauging average human combat ability from the skirmish, Coddle concludes that the humans who traveled with Mylano were far stronger. Advancing to the 3rd floor, they encounter a dramatic increase in skeleton numbers. Yet with Coddle at the forefront, the party advances smoothly without encountering serious trouble. It hardly feels like a dungeon at all because he trivializes every obstacle. Eventually, they reach the deepest chamber of the dungeon, where the skeleton knight sits ominously upon a throne, and seeing it up close leaves the others utterly terrified. Hayes cannot comprehend why such a monstrosity exists here at all. Coddle asks whether the skeleton differs from the ones they fought earlier. Hayes explains it is vastly stronger, wielding both a long sword and heavy shield, and that without an elite knight-level warrior their chances of survival are essentially non-existent. Curious, Coddle asks what would happen if they retreated instead, and Hayes explains the territory would verify the threat and send authorities to deal with it. Hearing this, Coddle smiles quietly, and remarks that it sounds reasonable. He then walks straight toward the skeleton knight, leaving the others frozen in confusion over his intent. As he approaches, the knight's eye sockets ignite with a deep crimson glow as it awakens. Noticing it was already fully assembled, Coddle realizes this boss is unlike the others. The skeleton knight draws its sword back, and Hayes instantly understands what is about to happen. She casts a barrier just in time to shield them from the massive energy beam fired from the blade. However, She quickly realizes her magic is insufficient, and the barrier shatters moments later, leaving Tyrannus alone to block the attack with all his strength as Hayes struggles to breathe. The paladin barely withstands the blow, but what shocks him most is that a single strike nearly broke both a magical barrier and a frontline defender, making it painfully clear the armored boss is no ordinary foe. At that moment, the skeleton locks eyes on Cattle with killing intent, and suddenly charges forward at full speed. Cattle, as usual, remains completely calm. He casually punches the boss with such force that its bones instantly disintegrate, struck by power comparable to a speeding truck. The skeleton's upper body is blown away, leaving everyone staring in stunned disbelief. Cattle brushes off his hands, mildly disappointed that the fight ended so quickly. Then he notices something intriguing, and immediately calls Kassan over. Pointing at the ornate chest below, he asks if the thief can open it. Kassan quickly refuses, explaining the high-grade lock is far beyond his abilities. He sighs, lamenting the tragedy of finding treasure they cannot access, until the barbarian suddenly slams the chest so hard it begins smoking from friction alone. Tyrannus and Hayes stare in frozen shock, as Cattle grins and declares that rewards claimed through violence are the finest, then tells Kassan to collect the contents. Kassan is baffled that someone would simply smash open a chest and wonders why he was asked at all. In any case, with that settled, the party finally exits the dungeon and Cattle is surprised the moment they step outside. The dungeon entrance collapses without warning. Kassan barely reacts. No unclear dungeons vanish like this, meaning no hidden areas were missed. Learning that secret chambers can exist only fuels his excitement even more, for all the dungeon expeditions still waiting in the future, the unknown treasures he might uncover next. Back at the border, the guard is left utterly stunned when he realizes the suspicious group somehow returned alive and unharmed. Sweat beats down his face as he nervously asks Cattle and the others how things went. The barbarian responds cheerfully, saying he had an amazing time. That enthusiasm unsettles the guard slightly, yet he proceeds with protocol by questioning each member individually about the dungeon. Hayes goes first, and calmly reports that she noticed nothing abnormal or concerning during the mission. The captain remains doubtful and presses her, asking whether allowing a barbarian into the territory would truly acceptable. She hesitates, clearly aware the questioning is meant to assess possible threats. Kassan steps up next, stating that Cattle does not behave like a reckless barbarian prone to causing trouble. The guard is surprised to hear that such overwhelming strength was not misused, finding the restraint both rare and noteworthy. When it is Catel's turn, he offers balanced remarks about everyone and gives sincere praise where it is deserved. This catches the guard off guard, as dungeon parties usually leave these interviews blaming one another. After hearing all their statements, the guard allows them entry but warns they will be expelled immediately if they cause any trouble, then hands Catel a heavy sack filled with coins as payment for clearing the dungeon. Even the guard feels no temptation to skim from it after seeing Catel's relaxed expression. With the matter settled, Catel turns toward his companions and tells them to take their portion of the reward, though they instinctively try to refuse. He insists it is only right since they completed the dungeon together as a team. Catel then suggests celebrating their first mission with a few drinks. They nervously agree, uncertain how to refuse. Someone known as the Ashen Barbarian. The group heads toward the main gate, while the guard continues watching Catel closely from behind, still harboring suspicion. He knows Catel possesses the kind of power that can drop a dungeon boss in one strike, rivaling or surpassing elite knights. Because of that, the guard quietly orders his men to keep monitoring Catel, while he himself goes to report directly to the domain lord. Inside the lord's opulent estate, the guard is granted entry into the private chambers. There, Luke Barkin, ruler of the Barkin domain in Gehentra, calmly asks about the urgent matter. The captain explains that the rumored barbarian has finally appeared. Lord Barkin turns his attention fully to the guard captain and asks whether he granted the barbarian permission to enter. The captain admits he did, believing it would not cause serious issues at the time. Lord Barkin raises an eyebrow, asking what sort of trouble he is referring to. The captain explains the barbarian's strength is excessive and could cause major problems later. Hearing this, the lord leans forward and asks exactly how strong. The captain reveals that the man defeated a skeleton knight with a single strike. Lord Barkin's eyes widen in disbelief. A skeleton knight normally challenges trained knights or stronger fighters, yet a barbarian accomplished this effortlessly, a class hardly known for intellect, defeating such a foe in one blow. Lord Barkin asks for a confirmation that this places the barbarian at first-rate level. The captain agrees it is highly likely, then admits he cannot rule out the possibility that the barbarian is even stronger. That uncertainty makes the lord visibly uneasy. He worries that a barbarian of such caliber could become a future political nightmare given their belief that strength alone rules. He orders the captain to summon Catel, though the captain hesitates, questioning the wisdom of it. Lord Barkin calmly states that leaving such power unchecked within the domain is more dangerous. Meeting the man personally may allow him to assess and control the situation. The captain still voices concern, but the lord reminds him his personal knight will be present. Turns to that knight for an opinion. Knight confidently claims that no barbarian, no matter how strong, can defeat refined swordsmanship passed down by a legendary master. Satisfied, Lord Barkin orders that the barbarian be brought before him. Meanwhile, Cattle sits with his companions, absolutely demolishing a hearty meal, while the others silently watch him eat as if he has been starving for years. He slams his mug down mid-meal, and cheerfully praises the food and peaceful atmosphere, offering to cover the meal and urging everyone to eat freely. The offer leaves them genuinely stunned. Cattle then asks Sir Tyrannus about the divine powers he wields, since nothing particularly flashy stood out during the dungeon run. Tyrannus scratches his head in embarrassment, and explains he is still training, and far from his full potential. Cattle calls it unfortunate but quickly turns to the cleric, asking if a temple of Colossia exists nearby. She explains there likely is not, as Colossia is not a welcomed deity, often shunned for tied to deception and trickery. She then looks directly at Cattle, and asks how strong he believes himself to be, catching everyone completely off guard. He admits honestly that he has no idea where he ranks, having only recently left the frozen wilderness. He asks what level a skeleton knight normally represents. The cleric explains that only second-rate fighters can face one, and only first-rate warriors defeat them so decisively. Before the discussion continues, the cafe owner approaches nervously, politely asking them to leave as closing time approaches, looking on the verge of collapsing. Cattle responds with a gentle apology, and quietly leaves with the group, later asking if they have plans for the future. Before he finishes speaking, they all quickly claim they do, insisting they are extremely busy. Cattle accepts it without complaint, and says goodbye, hoping to meet him again someday. The others stare at him with frozen expressions, desperate to escape. As night falls, Cattle finds comfortable lodging and realizes it is the first real bed he has used since arriving. He feels reassured knowing dungeon loot paid for proper accommodations. The comfort feels heavenly compared to the frozen wastelands. He begins pondering the future now that he has reached civilization, dreaming of visiting elven holy lands, magic towers or even the royal capital, until sleep finally claims him. Knock at the door jolts him awake the next morning. He wipes drool from his face, and forces himself upright. Opening the door, he finds the guard captain standing before him. Cattle rubs his eyes, as the captain calmly informs him that the Lord wishes to meet him personally. Cattle brightens at the idea, and agrees immediately with an innocent smile. Half-dressed, he asks the captain to wait while he gets ready, stunning the man with how casually he accepts. The scene shifts to a lively street within the Lord's domain, where daylight finally reveals the city's beauty to Cattle. He is amazed by how vibrant it looks compared to the dark version he saw last night, and feels lucky to be here. Meanwhile, the captain walks ahead, visibly tense about what Cattle might be doing behind him. He chooses not to look back, and simply hopes nothing strange happens. At the gates, the captain announces their arrival to Lord Barkin, who warmly invites them inside, and extends his hand in greeting. He introduces himself with composed confidence and steady authority. Cattle responds courteously by taking his hand, and he even dips his head slightly as he states his name. The gesture visibly shocks the Lord, since barbarians almost never bow. He briefly wonders if he has lived long enough to witness every oddity imaginable. Complimenting Cattle's manners, he motions for him to sit. Cattle scans the room with clear curiosity in his eyes, finds the castle's structure impressive, reminding him strongly of medieval buildings from Ur. His attention soon shifts to the knight standing beside the Lord. His expression brightens with nostalgia at the familiar armor, recalling rare characters he once played. However, the knight completely misreads the look, sensing danger where none exists. He assumes the barbarian's gaze is filled with killing intent. The knight stiffens and inches his hand toward his weapon, ready to strike first. Before matters escalate, Lord Barkin clears his throat and calmly explains the meeting's purpose is simply to verify details about Cattle. Cattle nods calmly without objection. Lord begins by asking where he originates from. Cattle shrugs lightly, noting the question seems important, and answers that he comes from the coldest place known, a frozen wasteland. The response leaves both the knight and the Lord momentarily speechless. They exchange stunned looks, realizing he may truly be the barbarian of legend. Lord admits the tale sounds difficult to believe. Cattle replies that surviving there was brutal, and belief is entirely the Lord's choice. Rather than press further, Lord Barkin changes the subject to the question weighing on his mind, namely, just how strong this barbarian truly is. Cattle laughs at the question, saying it makes little sense since even he does not know his own limits. The Lord and his knight share another tense glance. Without delay, the Lord proposes a sparring match with his knight and offers a generous reward, leaving Cattle trying to fully grasp the sudden turn of events. The Lord clearly states the rules, emphasizing that it is not a fight to the death and expects compliance. Cattle readily agrees without hesitation. The Lord and knight quietly observe as Cattle becomes visibly excited at the thought of battling a magically enhanced knight, and witnessing such power up close. To them, it seems the barbarian cannot hide his natural love for combat despite his polite demeanor, which unsettles both of them. At last, the anticipated moment arrives. A sparring match takes place within the arena, where the two fighters stand facing one another like true rivals. The Lord silently prays no blood is spilled as he officially begins the match. By ringing a polished bronze bell, the knight informs Cattle that witnessing refined swordsmanship should be considered an honor. Cattle calmly agrees. Yet the knight feels insulted by the barbarian's relaxed stance. He wastes no time, leaning forward to demonstrate the vast difference in strength. As he thrusts his blade, it suddenly splits into three, completely catching Cattle off guard. Triple blades make him briefly suspect an illusion, but he quickly realizes all three swords are real. Cattle dodges every strike with ease. Wondering if such flashy techniques truly qualify as swordsmanship, the knight assumes Cattle is barely evading the attacks through raw strength. Deciding to end it, he prepares a final decisive strike. At that moment, Cattle flicks the blade with his finger, shattering it instantly, along with the knight's pride. Grabs the knight's armor as if it were worn cloth, and tosses him across the arena effortlessly, causing Lord Barkin to break into a cold sweat. When the match ends, the Lord stares in disbelief at his champion defeated in one blow. Unfazed, Cattle turns to the Lord and casually asks if they are finished. The Lord struggles to find words as he processes what he witnessed. He estimates that flattening a top-tier knight like that requires superhuman strength, yet he has no clear way to measure the full extent of it. That uncertainty only heightens his anxiety, knowing such power could destabilize the world. After a pause, he decides to inform the swordmaster, believing the man may already be on his way. A familiar voice suddenly speaks nearby. Turning, he sees the elderly swordmaster already present. He sighs quietly in response, muttering that the old man's unsettling habits have not changed. Swordmaster Kane chuckles, saying even he needs amusement sometimes, then asks about the situation. Lord Barkin rises respectfully, stating it is an honor to host Master Kane on such short notice. Meanwhile, the injured knight lies groaning in bed. When the door suddenly opens, Lord Barkin enters unexpectedly and asks about his condition. The knight scrambles upright, apologizing, and claiming he will recover in a few days. Lord Kane steps in and says the apology should be directed at him instead, since losing to a mere barbarian reflects poorly on his training. The master examines the knight briefly. He notes the armor is destroyed, yet the knight bears no injuries. This leads him to conclude the barbarian deliberately held back. Kane explains that their opponent is not a brute, but someone with exceptional control over his strength. He adds that such mercy indicates power far beyond an ordinary knight, placing him at least at a superhuman level. Both the Lord and the knight fall silent in shock. Lord Barkin clears his throat, asking how the barbarian compares to the swordmaster himself. Kane replies confidently that even so, the barbarian cannot rival a true swordmaster. The Lord sweats nervously as Kane continues, noting the barbarian used no aura, which should be impossible. He wonders if this reflects the true potential of the Ashen barbarian, recalling how he once dismissed the ancient stories. Yet now, hearing the man came from the White Steppes, he begins to believe the legends may hold truth. He questions whether Kettle is even human or a beast from that cursed land, then reminds himself a true monster would not show mercy to a helpless knight. Even so, the mystery remains why someone from that frozen hell appeared now. Lord Barkin notices the swordmaster lost in thought and grows uneasy. Kane dismisses the concern, saying it is an issue for another time, adding a remark about the Emperor's increasingly absurd requests. He advises the Lord to set aside his worries for now, asks whether the barbarian is still within the domain, which the Lord confirms. The master snorts dismissively, and says he will judge it with his own eyes. Meanwhile, back inside Lord Barkin's mansion, the captain asks about Cattle's plans going forward, but he admits he has not decided yet. Earlier, the captain had already delivered the reward for the duel, and the Lord personally granted him freedom to act within the domain without restriction. Cattle figures that while he lacks clear goals, having some form of identification would be useful so he does not need to clear a dungeon every time he enters a new land. Night Guard captain explains there are two options, either gaining sponsorship from a powerful figure or joining the mercenaries. For the latter, he would need a solid reputation at the mercenary guild, and since most mercs are simple errand runners, the captain suggests a legend like Cattle seek a high-status sponsor instead. However, Cattle blushes the instant he hears about a mercenary guild. In his imagination, mercenaries are heroic adventurers who hunt monsters for a living, straight out of his childhood fantasies. Smiling brightly, he asks where he can sign up as a mercenary. The captain awkwardly replies that he should visit the guild, wearing the expression of someone completely smitten. Cattle politely asks the captain to guide him there. Mercenaries in this world live as wandering nomads who accept any request available, a lifestyle some romanticize while most view them as the lowest rung of society. They are often treated as expendable tools sent to handle dangerous tasks, frequently risking their lives just to survive. At the mercenary guild later on, One merc slaps another in a burst of anger for embarrassing him. The other man snaps back immediately and dares him to continue. Around them, other mercs watch like it is entertainment and even start placing bets. As the two lunatics brawl over nothing, a pink-haired receptionist asks her coworker Rosa what she thinks of the new recruits. Blonde looks exhausted and says they are all complete weirdos. One claims to be a powerless paladin, another is a thief who looks like a game key, and the last is a priestess who seems normal but serves a suspicious god. Hearing this depressing summary, the pink-haired girl is left speechless while Rosa sighs. Irritated, she must endure another day of chaos at her dead-end job. She secretly wishes a noble knight would appear and rescue her from her monotonous desk work. Right then, the guild doors swing open dramatically. Rosa instantly snaps back into professional mode. Radiating confidence, Cattle strides into the guild with undeniable presence. Every ongoing fight freezes as the mercs realize the Ashen Barbarian has arrived. Others stare openly with jaws slack, leaving Cattle wondering if he accidentally broke some rule. Then, he calmly walks up to the counter. The receptionist trembles as she carefully asks his reason for joining, terrified of offending him. He explains he has many reasons, but mainly wants to make a name for himself, and when asked if he is ready to earn status through achievements, he agrees. He requests 5 copper coins along with his name and age. Cattle gives his name, but admits he does not know his age. She decides to estimate an age herself to complete the paperwork, handing him a polished bronze badge that marks him as an official mercenary. She warns him not to lose it, staring at the modest bronze emblem. Cattle brightens immediately and asks if there are any jobs available. His enthusiasm for labor catches her off guard. After that, she lays out the available beginner requests. Cattle is shocked by how pathetic the frank job list is. Seeing his reaction, Rosa panics internally, fearing his pride might lash out. Nervously, she explains better jobs unlock with a stronger record. Unexpectedly, he quickly makes a selection, pointing directly at the herb gathering request. Rosa double checks if he is sure, and upon his confirmation, explains where to find the plants. She shows him an image of the red herb, and says it grows just outside the village. Cattle cheerfully stands, says he will handle it, and heads out immediately, leaving her stunned by how relaxed and positive he is. After he exits, Rosa remains seated in confusion while her friend approaches, shaking uncontrollably. The scene shifts to the nearby forest, just beyond the village where Cattle locates a field, completely filled with herbs. He removes his clothes without hesitation, puts on a straw hat against the sun and harvests with expert care. An hour later he returns, dropping a massive sack of herbs on the counter. Smiling innocently, he asks if the quantity is enough as Rosa wonders if he wiped out an entire field. She is astonished by how perfectly preserved the herbs are. Unlike most mercs who rip them out carelessly and ruin their value, Cattle proudly boasts about his delicate fingerwork, making Rosa uneasy. Regardless, she hands him a tray with a single silver coin as payment, though barely enough for cheap bread. The honest labor fills him with a warm sense of fulfillment. Energized, he leaps up and asks for another job immediately. Rosa is completely stunned that he seems genuinely happy. He shocks her further by saying he wants to work until sunset. Overwhelmed, she cries that yet another handsome merc turned out strange. Before long, Cattle completes several tasks and signs up for his 3rd cleaning job in a row, causing the receptionist to suspect he may be obsessed with cleanliness. She asks him to confirm the assignment. He happily heads toward the warehouse, thrilled for more work. Upon arrival, he politely announces he came to clean and asks if the woman present owns the building. He finishes rapidly, as heavy lifting poses no challenge to him. Next, he sweeps the streets with such enthusiasm that dust explodes everywhere until he reins into his strength. Meanwhile, Master Kane watches from afar using binoculars, while wearing an extremely suspicious disguise. He struggles to understand why someone with empire-shaking power wastes time on menial labor. Yet continued observation reveals the barbarian is not killing time. He genuinely enjoys the work and puts in sincere effort. This leaves the master baffled, as the warrior feels more like a gentle giant than a savage. Later that day, after finishing countless tasks, Cattle returns to the guild, where the receptionist hands him a pouch for completing 15 jobs in one day. Receiving 15 silver coins, he beams with joy and promises to return tomorrow. As he walks through town, children cry at the sight of him, and adults glare at him with harsh judgment. He ignores it all, and cheerfully heads to the local library. The librarian greets him nervously, but freezes as his massive frame approaches. He politely asks to read some books, and quietly begins, selecting a small stack and reading in silence. The librarian watches in disbelief. Even the swordmaster observing outside is stunned, questioning whether Snowfield barbarians are raised differently, or if Cattle alone is a rare exception. After finishing a thick history book, he closes it, reflecting on how the Empire defeated the kingdom despite Myona supplying weapons to the latter, and how the once proud kingdom now exists only as a vassal of the Empire. Following the Empire's triumph, its power balloons until it engulfs almost half of humanity's domain, and its borders keep creeping outward. as if total planetary control is only a matter of time. After our guy finishes scheming tales of empires and their obsession with conquest, focus drifts away from the dull affairs of humankind, and toward the strange and inhuman races instead. He grabs another volume, eager to learn what kinds of mythical creatures inhabit this bizarre world he now calls home. He discovers Manhwa, a colossal dwarven cavern rumored to be packed with rare, shimmering ores. Then he reads about Pisarapia, a fairy settlement that sounds almost unreal in its beauty. The pages go on to describe Lagamiria, floating cities in the heavens inhabited by celestial folk. And lastly, Elfo Sagredo, a secret elven refuge so well hidden that even legendary rulers never found it. Cattle laughs, thinking that if anyone ever stumbles into that place, it might as well be him. Just as his confidence peaks, another section of the book completely blindsides him. It speaks of regions as harsh as the snowfield he survived, called demon zones, forbidden to humans, filled with beings that defy common sense. Only 5 in number, yet vast beyond reason and more terrifying with each description. One is the silent forest, where sound itself is devoured. Another is the abyss that drags everything toward corruption. There is also the deep sea, home to bizarre aquatic primates that breathe much like humans. Then comes the hollow pit, so empty it makes nothingness feel unsettling. And finally the snowfield he knows so well, all ruled by aberrations that cannot cross into human lands. This makes Cattle stop and marvel at how absurdly massive the world must be, remembering just how endless the snowfield felt. After absorbing all this information, he rises, feeling thankful, and offers a polite word of gratitude to the librarian, who simply nods quietly, accepting the thanks with visible nervousness. Our protagonist heads back toward the guild, approaching receptionist Rosa with his usual laid-back demeanor. He asks about available jobs, and as she hands over new request slips, Cattle browses them while far away. Master Kane finishes his observation, and decides the moment has come to confront the elusive Ashen Barbarian directly. Later that night within the lively city, Cattle returns in high spirits after completing more than a dozen minor tasks. He is mildly shocked that the small payouts add up to a respectable sum. Walking alone under faint moonlight, he muses that fame, as a top mercenary, might be closer than he thought. Sadly, he has no idea a hooded mustache is already lying in wait nearby. Without warning, the cloaked old man blocks his path, fixing him with an intense gaze. The Swordmaster strikes a dramatic pose, aiming for mystery. Cattle casually remarks that he noticed the man following him all day, rattling Master Kane. He bluntly asks what the old fellow wants this time. Kane is left speechless, unable to believe his flawless stealth had been exposed by someone so young. The shock deepens when Cattle reaches for his weapon, and wonders aloud if the man is a bandit. Receiving no reply, he even notes how impressive it is to slip past city defenses given the tight security. Kane wants to declare his true identity as the Swordmaster, but wounded pride seals his lips as Cattle mocks the idea of an elderly man resorting to crime due to a failing economy. That irritation soon twists into a smug smile, as Cattle realizes capturing such a bandit would raise his guild reputation effortlessly. The Swordmaster is far from pleased by the confusion, yet he sees a chance to be taken seriously in combat, allowing him to test the Barbarian's true power without restraint. As Cattle steps closer, the old man can barely process what follows. His opponent vanishes completely in an instant. Before his mind can catch up, Cattle reappears inches from his face, a massive hand shooting forward faster than thought. At the last split second, Kane twists aside. Even Cattle admires that smooth evasion from someone so old. Master Kane's heart nearly stops, knowing a fraction slower would mean defeat, and sensing no aura at all from Cattle. The Barbarian smiles sincerely, acknowledging Kane's skill. Kane wonders if that feat was pure physical might alone. He hardens his expression and charges with full seriousness. However, his advance halts instantly when Cattle disappears again and reappears behind him, gripping his shoulder with crushing force. Kane is stunned, unable to detect even a hint of movement despite his heightened senses. Cattle then traps him in an arm lock. Kane struggles desperately, but cannot break free at first. Realizing the fight has become one of brute strength, he unleashes all his power, and pushes back with everything he has. The moment that force surges, Cattle is honestly impressed, and Kane finally slips out of the hold. The old man looks briefly triumphant, till Cattle dryly comments that bandits these days know advanced tricks. He notices mana coursing through Kane's body, a sign of top-tier elites, making the disguise even stranger. Meanwhile, Kane questions what kind of monster Cattle truly is, since his mana should shred normal humans with mere contact. But the Barbarian remains completely unharmed. Cattle admits he does not understand Kane's technique, but declares the game over. Hearing this, Kane instinctively grabs his sword, but before drawing it, the Barbarian calmly pushes the blade back into its sheath. Such humiliation enrages a man of Kane's stature. He strains with all his might, yet cannot overcome Cattle's single finger. Watching that enormous hand inch closer, Kane finally accepts that he is finished. Cattle slings him over his shoulder, amused at what qualifies as a bandit here. At the guard tower, The captain is utterly stunned, seeing the ashen barbarian dragging Master Kane like a pet. First assumes an attack, until Cattle cheerfully reports a captured bandit. The captain's jaw nearly hits the floor. Smiling brightly, Cattle asks if his guild rank will rise now. After collecting himself, the captain wonders how a man beyond human limits was hauled in like a beaten stray. Regaining composure, he firmly states the captive is no bandit. Naturally, Cattle concludes the guard must be working with a real criminal. Bowing slightly, the guard explains the old man is the revered swordmaster of Gihentra. Cattle doubts that claim entirely. With a straight face, he insists the senile bandit attacked him for his silver. The guard swears he could never mistake the swordmaster, even as Cattle suggests illusion magic. The captain replies that such magical skill would earn a title too, leaving Cattle quietly questioning what swordmaster really means. Fed up with the barbarian's clueless rambling, patience finally runs out. The knight captain confirms one final time that the captive truly is the swordmaster. He then states that the full incident will be reported to his lord. At the mansion, Lord Barkin is left speechless upon hearing that Master Kane was utterly defeated by a barbarian. Hours later, Cattle is summoned as well and offers a courteous apology to Master Kane. Kane, in turn, also apologizes for the regrettable misunderstanding. An awkward silence settles heavily between them. Lord Barkin and the knight captain remain stunned by the fact that the swordmaster has lost his first duel ever. That alone proves the Ashen Barbarian surpasses one of the kingdom's elite fighters. Even if Master Kane only recently crossed into superhuman territory and ranks at the bottom, the ease with which Cattle One still brands him as an inhuman menace. The thought gives Lord Barkin a pounding headache, so he excuses himself and tells them to sort it out privately. Once the others leave the chamber, Master Kane and Cattle quietly lock eyes. The old man struggles to admit that he was flawlessly defeated and utterly humiliated. At last, he steadies himself and formally introduces himself as Swordmaster Kane. Cattle pauses and asks if Swordmaster is his real name, prompting Kane to explain it is a noble title, not a birth name. Cattle then asks whether the impressive technique he saw earlier was unique to swordmasters. Lord Kane summons glowing energy around his hand. Cattle leaps from his chair in excitement, admitting he had mistaken it for a cheap bandit trick before. Now that he knows it is a swordmaster ability, he finds it irresistibly cool. Lord Kane explains that the energy is aura, a tangible form of arcane power. Recalling how striking the glowing aura looked, even on the old master, Cattle eagerly asks how he might learn to use it himself. He explains that aura is simply arcane power given physical shape. When Cattle asks if it resembles mana, Kane clarifies that arcane is the source, manifesting as aura for warriors and mana for mages. Fascinated, Cattle boldly asks to be taught, even admitting his total lack of experience. Seeing his earnest determination, Kane questions why someone already stronger than a swordmaster would need such skills. Cattle admits he lacks technique entirely and mostly relies on brute swings and instinct. That confession eases Kane slightly, convincing him the loss was partly circumstance. Wanting to salvage his prey, Kane decides to reclaim honor by teaching the barbarian. He agrees, declaring that a swordsman is incomplete without his blade. Cattle bluntly agrees, remarking that Kane seemed weak only because he never used his sword, leaving the old man stunned. Cattle adds that handing out swordmaster titles too easily would be sad, angering Kane, though he admits Kane might have won with his blade. That small concession restores a fragment of Kane's dignity. Cattle recalls training seriously with swords back on Earth, yet realizing those lessons pale beside arcane-infused combat here. As training begins, Lord Kane grips his sword and explains his style balances illusion with reality. He asks Cattle what he witnessed in the duel with his disciple, and Cattle describes the triple strike that all proved real. From this, Cattle starts grasping the idea of embodiment. He asks directly whether swordsmanship here relies more on technique than strength. The old master answers by drawing his blade, which shines with a soft green aura, instantly capturing Cattle's attention. Kane grumbles about demonstrating such refined art to a barbarian. He slams the sword into the floor. The ground fractures, as his strike splits cleanly into 5 precise blows. Kane loosely explains how techniques branch and evolve together, but Cattle barely listens. Instead, he claims he might be able to imitate it. The swordmaster scoffs angrily, calling it absurd and refusing to believe it. He cannot accept that a lifetime of mastery could be copied so easily. However, Cattle swings anyway, his axe moving without hesitation. To everyone's shock, the strike splits into 5 attacks. Kane freezes, jaw slack, unable to comprehend the sight. When Cattle asks if he did it right, Kane admits it looked convincing but was achieved through speed, not true technique. Regaining composure, he insists there was no genuine skill behind that blow. Cattle calmly argues that in real combat, results should matter more than method. Kane grows unsettled, the words sinking deep until tears quietly fall, refusing to be belittled. Kane performs another technique where his body appears to split apart. He proudly names it bodily separation, achievable only through complete aura mastery. Turning to Cattle, he challenges him to copy it. Without delay, Cattle steps forward. Using extreme speed, He fakes the effect once again. The force tears the roof apart as he moves. A violent whirlwind follows. Standing confidently, Cattle asks if the form was correct. Kane collapses to his knees, tears streaming freely. He cannot accept that someone like Cattle could mimic techniques refined over an entire lifetime. Cattle remarks that for such a stern man, Kane is surprisingly emotional. Trying to cheer him up, Cattle praises his swordsmanship sincerely. He admits his own swings were nothing more than raw speed, not true swordplay. That praise alone lifts Kane's spirits. Soon he spirals into self-satisfaction, believing only he can truly embody illusion and reality. Clenching his fist, he mutters that his technique is flawless. Blaming the situation entirely on the Barbarian's insanity, Cattle then calmly asks for deeper guidance. Kane, still emotionally shaken, apologizes for losing composure, his tone turning serious. He explains that mastering aura begins with understanding arcane at its core. At that moment, Kane adds that higher mastery requires awakening arcane, except for rare souls blessed by the divine. Curious, Cattle asks if divine power is separate. Kane replies that divine gifts come from gods, and ignore effort or talent. Continues without pause, describing arcane as a dormant force within all beings, and the source of every ability. He then outlines the 5 stages of arcane mastery. First being simply sensing its existence. Cattle wonders if everyone can do that. Kane quietly denies it, saying only those who feel it belong to the 3rd class. As he continues explaining the stages, Cattle recalls something Manhwa once said, and it finally clicks. Kane notes the system is merely a guide, with blurry lines between classes. At last, they begin the first stage, known as arcane perception. Closing his eyes, Master Kane calmly tells Cattle to feel the world around him. Awakening arcane perception means forcing every sense you have to operate at its absolute limit. He compares it to becoming aware of the breeze brushing against your skin, then noticing an unfamiliar sensation, almost like another presence nearby. But only seconds later, Cattle bluntly admits he feels nothing whatsoever. Slightly startled, Master Kane did not expect him to fail that quickly. He admits he assumed someone with Cattle's overwhelming strength would struggle to grasp it naturally. Typically, warriors without magic slowly awaken arcane perception over time, making Cattle a rare anomaly. Master Kane speculates this oddity might be linked to the strange effects of the White Wasteland. Cattle recalls that none of the barbarians he knew had ever mentioned anything about arcane power. Hearing this, Kane explains that sensing arcane is extremely difficult, so he offers to forcibly unlock it by channeling aura into Cattle. Despite not fully understanding the explanation, Cattle grows excited when he realizes aura is about to be transferred into him. With the enthusiasm of a true aura farmer, he declares himself completely ready. He sits down eagerly as the sword master instructs him to relax and focus inward. Master Kane places a firm hand on his back and begins channeling aura, but he suddenly freezes. Sensing what lies inside Cattle, he begins questioning whether the Ashen Barbarian is even human. His interior feels denser than stone, with muscle mass so extreme it resembles a gravitational singularity. Confused by the delay, Cattle turns around and asks what the problem is. Kane admits he was momentarily lost in thought. However, he soon realizes he cannot reach Cattle's arcane core at all. No matter how deeply he pushes his aura, it feels like being dragged into a crushing endless void. In the end, he admits this approach is completely ineffective. Upon hearing this, Cattle's disappointment reaches catastrophic levels. Frustrated and confused, he asks if it means he simply lacks any magical talent. Kane firmly explains that forcing aura alone cannot awaken arcane, leaving self-awakening as the only option. The problem is, Kane could not detect even the faintest trace of arcane anywhere in Cattle's body. Alarmed, Cattle asks if that means he truly has none at all. Kane responds that he cannot confirm anything, as Cattle's body defies all norms. He explains that aura must flow smoothly through the body. Cattle's absurd physical density blocks that flow entirely. Realizing that even a master of this caliber cannot help him, Cattle sulks like a child, muttering that he will never wield that mysterious power. While Kane says no path can be ruled out yet, he suggests seeking a stronger swordmaster or attempting entry into the Mage Tower. Kane sincerely apologizes for being unable to assist further. Cattle brushes it off, saying it is fine since some hope still remains. He thanks the aging swordmaster for everything he has learned, leaving Kane standing there, slightly stunned. Every barbarian he knew before was nothing but a savage brute unfit for society. Recognizing Cattle's difference, Kane asks if he would consider serving the kingdom. He explains this would mean pledging loyalty and receiving noble status. Kane promises rapid promotion, and even offers personal sponsorship. Cattle declines, saying he prefers a wandering life, which visibly disappoints the swordmaster. Knowing how valuable Cattle's strength could be, Kane presses the matter once more. He asks if Cattle truly wants to refuse such a rare chance. Cattle responds that he values freedom above all, and kneels to no one. The swordmaster is left completely speechless. Cattle thanks him again before leaving, grateful for the guidance he received. Later, Kane walks the halls alone, reflecting on how foolish it was to believe someone like Cattle could ever be controlled, acting entirely on his own will. makes him more dangerous than any demon of the snowfields. Letting out a weary sigh, Cain wonders what the Emperor is thinking by attempting to conquer the demon realm. Back in Luke Barkin's chambers, the Lord asks if Cain is certain about the Emperor's intentions. Cain confirms it, stating the Emperor is sending people to die under the guise of reconnaissance. This raises fears of another mad Emperor reincarnated, and Cain warns that summons may soon come despite incomplete human conquest. He also reports increasing dungeon outbreaks, likely caused by corruption spreading from the demon realm. Regardless of the reason, humanity will suffer the most. Cain then raises one final concern. The greatest anomaly of the wasteland now roams free. With that said, he asks the Lord for his thoughts. Lord Barkin believes Cattle is not an enemy but says only time will reveal his true path. After delivering Cain a deeply humbling existential blow, a new day dawns as Cattle resumes exploring Varkan like a carefree traveler. He begins noticing children crying and clinging to their mothers as he passes. Even grown men desperately try to avoid crossing his path. He wonders if it is due to his primitive clothing rather than his massive Nimba-sized build. His beast-hide vest hardly gives off a civilized impression. Today's goal is simple: acquire proper civilized clothing. His first stop is an upscale clothing shop. Vibrant fabrics and neatly arranged garments fill the interior. When the manager sees the hulking figure enter, he nearly collapses in terror. Anyone would panic when a towering barbarian demands new fashion. On the verge of tears, the manager explains they lack giant-sized stock. He offers to custom tailor an outfit if Cattle can wait. This cheers Cattle up, and he eagerly places an order. The manager records his contact details and promises to notify him. Internally, the man fears a mistake could cost both business and life. Failure is not an option. After measurements and payment, Cattle heads back toward the guild. Along the road, he spots a strange blue gem. Curious, he picks it up. Examining it closely, he is captivated by its shine. He pockets the gem, planning to ask the guild about it later. As usual, he heads straight to receptionist Rosa. He hands her the gem and asks if she knows anything about it. After inspecting it, Rosa says it is not a natural gemstone. The surface is far too smooth. It appears carved, with no markings to identify its origin. She continues holding it. Rosa becomes entranced by its glow. Cattle snaps his fingers, snapping her out of it. He jolts back to awareness. Cattle asks if she is feeling alright. He intervenes, because she looked dangerously mesmerized. Rosa admits she barely noticed the pull, then senses strange energy, and offers professional appraisal. Cattle declines, preferring to investigate it himself. Side quests excite him, so before leaving, he asks Rosa for today's available jobs. As usual, the list was packed with dull chores like pulling weeds, digging potatoes, and cleaning streets and sewers. Most mercenaries would scoff at such work, but Cattle was perfectly content handling beginner-level tasks. He tore through the entire list in no time at all. After collecting his rewards, he returned to his room feeling satisfied and ready to rest for the night. Before sleeping, he took out the strange orb and studied it quietly. From what he had seen earlier, Rosa had nearly lost herself to it in a trance-like state. Suddenly, a bodiless voice echoed from within the orb, calling out to him. In an instant, his consciousness was pulled inward as the voice tried guiding him somewhere. It felt as though a mental map was being laid out for him, leading Cattle to suspect some form of domination magic. With nothing better to do that night, he decided to humor the mysterious voice. He slipped his beast-hide vest back on and followed the guidance, though the voice was quickly becoming irritating. After pushing through thick vines and skirting the city's outskirts, he came upon a concealed cavern. Amused, he stepped inside without hesitation, fully aware something awaited him within. What Cattle did not realize was that he was under observation the moment he entered the gloomy cave. To his watcher, he was merely another sacrifice, a foolish barbarian suitable for the altar. The skeletal mage monitoring him thrilled at the thought of claiming a 10th victim to fuel his resurrection. Long ago, during an age of endless wars, countless kingdoms fell, all manipulated by a sinister mage who twisted emotions at will. He controlled numerous monarchs and ruled their lands from the shadows. Eventually, his crimes caught up to him and heroes hunted him down, but before dying he bound his soul to a vessel, becoming a lich. Thus, he existed as an immortal soul tethered to that phylactery. The once all-powerful mage waited patiently, plotting his eventual return. Leading countless lives, he settled in a remote region, distributing enchanted orbs to lure unaware victims. Each sacrifice fed the monarch, fueling his revival, after which he planned global domination with even greater power. Ages passed, and his ambition crept closer to completion, yet he found it strange that a barbarian had wandered into such an isolated place. This land was meant to be a quiet sacrifice ground, but even so, a barbarian of that size would suffice. The orb was designed to ensnare those lacking arcane awareness, targeting only ignorant mortals. Confident in his trap, the lich assumed the barbarian was just another simple brute with no arcane senses. He allowed the voice to continue guiding Cattle, eager to add another step toward resurrection. Meanwhile, Cattle casually wandered through the damp corridors until he reached a wooden gate. When he pushed open the ancient door, he discovered a skeletal mage awkwardly attempting to farm aura. Realizing he was face to face with an actual lich, Cattle nearly burst with excitement. From his knowledge, liches were former mages who had reached terrifying extremes, classic fantasy villains. Rather than fear, Cattle was geeking out over the encounter. The lich, however, began to feel uneasy. Now Cattle finally had both an explanation and a culprit behind the orb's strange pull. The lich doubted his senses, detecting no arcane energy and suspecting a powerful mental shielding artifact instead. He praised the barbarian's supposed luck, while Cattle had no clue what he meant. The lich raised his staff and began chanting. Nana surged as skeletons scattered throughout the crypt were animated. He threatened to crush Cattle through sheer force. The undead minions were unleashed to swarm the living sacrifice. Cattle, meanwhile, was thrilled to experience a textbook fantasy dungeon battle. The moment the first skeleton stepped within reach, he slapped the bones straight into the ground. The sheer power sent chills through the lich. Skull shattered into fragments. Kettle judged the slap underwhelming, though the result exceeded expectations. Offended, the lich ordered his minions to cripple Cattle's limbs, since the sacrifice only needed to live. The next wave of skeletons appeared better equipped, wielding swords. Kettle scoffed and smashed the first skeleton's jaw with a punch. Another follow-up blow reduced a second skull to debris. A brutal roundhouse kick dropped the third. The fourth was effortlessly slammed back into the dirt. Watching his minions fall one by one, the lich stared in disbelief. Fortunately, Cattle had learned from his first dungeon run that crushing the skull works wonders. He was honestly disappointed the lich hadn't summoned something tougher like a death knight. Hearing that complaint deeply wounded the lich's pride. Rattling pile of bones stuttered that he would stop holding back. He lifted his scepter, calling forth an unusual summoning from the air. Mana wrapped around the figure, forming a complete suit of spectral armor. It turned out to be a skeleton knight, and Cattle felt no spark of interest. He had crushed one of these effortlessly not long ago, yet he briefly wondered if a lich-crafted version might offer more resistance. The moment the order to kill was issued, the skeleton knight lunged forward without hesitation. Cattle tightened his fist, bracing himself calmly. The blade came down mid-charge, and Cattle decided to test just how tough the thing really was. With a bored expression, he drove his fist straight through the knight's so-called reinforced armor. Just like before, the fight was laughably one-sided. However, unlike the previous skeleton knight he demolished, this one still had enough strength left to force a second exchange. Cattle found himself mildly impressed by its durability. The lich desperately flooded the knight with mana, pushing his reserves to their absolute limit to keep it standing. Even with most of its joints reduced to powder, the rattling heap of bones snarled at Cattle. Cattle simply waited, curious to see what the broken skeleton knight would attempt next. He tightened his grip, and flawlessly delivered a clean, perfectly timed punch to its skull. Once more, the knight was launched away like a lifeless bundle of bones. It slammed into the cavern wall, scattering fragments among the rubble. The lich felt his long-held dream of resurrection slipping through his bony fingers. Kettle stepped ahead without pause, crushing loose bones underfoot as he moved forward. He casually asked the lich if that was truly the best he could do. The so-called final boss of this fantasy world left him thoroughly disappointed. The lich still couldn't detect even a trace of mana from the barbarian, which made no sense since artifacts always leaked energy. He was forced to accept that the man before him was simply unnatural, a brute capable of destroying a skeleton knight with sheer physical power alone, across countless centuries of existence. He had never witnessed anything so utterly ridiculous. Judging Kettle worthy, the lich chose to confront him personally, claiming it an honor to suffer a lich's direct wrath. Darkness swallowed the surroundings, and rather than fear, Cattle felt excitement as he saw an endless void stretching without limit. The lich proclaimed that imprisonment in this terror-filled domain was the price for defiling his sanctuary. He spoke as if he hadn't been abducting innocent people himself by baiting them with the orb. Even the lich recognized how hollow his threat sounded. Everyone trapped here had been victims of the scattered orbs, and Cattle was no different. In a fit of arrogance, the lich boasted of being a supreme sorcerer who toppled 5 kingdoms. Carta's brainless kesses. Cattle remembered the elf queen he met days earlier, noting she also carried an absurdly long name, which briefly distracted him. Meanwhile, the lich was preparing a spell meant to turn him into a cornerstone for resurrection. A surge of dark energy erupted from the scepter, and forced itself into his vision. His sight twisted as he focused on the swirling mass of shadow. This spell was designed to manipulate human emotions. It dragged forth negative feelings, trapping the target in paralysis and mental collapse. Created by Cartus himself, the spell consumed minimal mana while granting him near invulnerability. Confident that a barbarian lacking arcane ability would crumble instantly, Cartus began planning his next move. Perhaps capturing this anomaly for study before the sacrifice would be worthwhile. Cartus summoned more skeletons to seize the supposedly stunned barbarian. When one of the spindly bone piles crept too close, Cattle sent it flying upward, smashing it into the cavern ceiling. Its skull shattered completely on impact. The haze vanished from Cattle's eyes, while the lich teetered on the edge of total panic. Every summon he called forth ended as scattered bone dust across the cave floor. He was certain the mind control spell had functioned flawlessly. Cattle found all the tricks dull, noting that endless skeletons were growing tiresome. He sighed in boredom, realizing his hopes for an epic clash were badly misplaced. With each passing word, the Lich's pride unraveled further. Cardos believed humans were ruled by emotion, all harboring deep negativity, which made his control magic absolute. Yet now he doubted the art he had refined for centuries. Phil openly asked for fireballs or magic missiles, something dramatic, since he despised being compared to low-tier spells. Driven by burning hatred toward the oblivious barbarian, Cardos summoned a formless, murky tide of darkness. He declared this ultimate art would consume the world and drown all reason in chaos. The overly dramatic chant reignited Cattle's hope for something truly legendary. When the dark wave reached its fullest form, it was released, surging forward to devour everything ahead. Cattle stood like a fascinated child, watching the darkness roll toward him. Confident of victory, the Lich laughed wildly as his ultimate technique peaked. His celebration ended abruptly when black bile spilled from his mouth. He collapsed to his knees, his strength nearly gone. Cardos had exhausted almost all his mana, leaving only enough to keep his body intact. Still, he believed the cost worthwhile, if it meant witnessing the barbarian's gruesome death. Sadly for him, the mana was wasted entirely. Kettle remained upright, complimenting the spell's strength, but clearly wanting much more. Even the most powerful magic in Cardos' arsenal failed against the bizarre barbarian. Any legendary hero struck head-on would have had their mind completely shattered. Kettle felt nothing more than a faint tingle. Watching the Lich tremble on his knees, Kettle reached for his battle axe. He endured every dark trick fairly, and now it was his turn to strike back. Cardos the Lich began fabricating excuses in his mind for the pounding in his head. Cardos claimed the barbarian came here deliberately, fully aware of his identity. As usual, Kettle had no clue what the rattling fool was rambling about. The Lich cackled, praising an imaginary intelligence network that supposedly tracked him down. Cardos swore he would rise again, break any blade against him, and reclaim dominion over the world. He recalled rumors of a hidden imperial facility deep within the empire, a place said to breed exceptional talents, leading him to believe this barbarian was forged there as a living weapon, an assassin refined by the empire for the sole purpose of killing him. Even so, Cardos Branulus Kesses vowed to survive, destroy the blade meant for him, and topple the empire again. Listening to the incoherent ranting, Kettle wondered if the unimpressive Lich had finally lost his mind. With no other options left, the ancient mage's soul abandoned his decaying vessel, and attempted to force its way into Kettle instead. He believed that seizing the barbarian's body, and devouring that simple mind would grant him a powerful new shell. It was his sole chance at survival, with enormous potential rewards. When his soul successfully entered the seemingly indestructible body, Cardos declared ownership of his new host. Upon reaching the barbarian's inner world, Cardos sensed something was terribly wrong. He had never encountered anything remotely like this. The Lich expected memories of imperial conditioning and careful molding, but what he witnessed revealed Kettle's true nature. Cardos admitted that even the Empire could never have conceived a being like this man. As his remaining consciousness unraveled rapidly, Cardos Branulus Kisses, the mighty Lich, died, utterly confused. Outside the cave, Kettle barely grasped what had even transpired. From his perspective, the Lich simply collapsed lifeless before managing any counterattack. During the entire confrontation, he had merely watched things unfold, interested in witnessing what kind of sorcery a fully matured mage could unleash. Instead, he walked away thinking liches were rather underwhelming in this world, though at least the dungeon was cleared cleanly and a reward was due. Kettle nonchalantly picked up the scepter Cardos had wielded, wondering if it might let him dabble in magic as well. He fiddled with it briefly, until the magic crystal core abruptly failed. Shrugging, he pocketed the scepter's power core like any other piece of loot. After that, he inspected the vase that once housed Cardos' soul as its vessel. He grabbed that too, making a note to ask Rosa to have it appraised later. With both the scepter and the vessel secured, he felt content with the haul. Just before leaving, a sinister magic circle etched into a wall drew his attention. He suspected some hidden chamber lay beyond the ominous artwork. He tested the wall, which promptly shattered from a light push rather than careful searching. What awaited behind it sent a chill down his spine. It was the Lich's concealed sacrificial chamber. Inside were numerous victims suspended helplessly in unconscious states. Kettle had expected bonus loot, not a gallery of living souls prepared for slaughter. Even so, curiosity pushed him to learn who these people were. He checked to see if any were conscious. He even tried calling out, but none responded in the slightest. Unsure how to handle such a discovery, he chose to return to the guild and report everything to the proper authorities. They would surely dispatch specialists to clean up the situation. By the time he stepped through the guild's doors, morning sunlight was already pouring in. Unlike the earlier days, Rosa greeted him warmly and respectfully instead of staring at him strangely. He mentioned he had encountered a few complications, which immediately piqued her interest. Kettle explained he solved the mystery of the orb from yesterday, detailing the hidden dungeon, which Rosa initially assumed was a joke. To her knowledge, only 5 liches existed, and their remote territory couldn't possibly hide one, so he needed proof. Cattle produced the vase that once served as Carda's life vessel. The object radiated ominous energy, and he expected a normal receptionist to appraise such a cursed thing. Rosa was momentarily at a loss for words. Then it dawned on her that the outrageous story he told was entirely real. He also mentioned discovering captives meant for sacrifice, making Rosa fear an early grave if this continued. He considered rescuing them, but their minds were shattered, so professionals were needed. Reflecting on it, recent disappearances across the territory suddenly made sense. If a lich was responsible, the issue far exceeded her responsibilities. She knew she had to notify someone immediately. The first captain of the guard rushed into the guild hall once the report reached him. There he found Cottle seated at a table, making the furniture seem comically small. Cottle calmly reassured the captain that the threat was already neutralized. When he mentioned the name Cardos Bernulus Kesses during his account, the captain was stunned, as the name was infamous enough that anyone would recognize it. Cardos was evil incarnate, a sorcerer who warped the world and pioneered emotion control magic. The madman who destroyed 5 kingdoms and drove kings insane, whose return as a lich terrified common foe. Yet Cottle insisted the lich was nothing special. Cardos self-destructed, prompting the captain to press for every detail he could get. Despite wanting to help, Cottle admitted it ended so fast there wasn't much more to explain. The captain asked him to wait while Lord Varkan was informed. Upon hearing of a lich nearby, the territorial overseer could scarcely believe it. He briefly convinced himself it had to be some other monster. Testimonies from rescued victims confirmed their captor was indeed a lich. Physical evidence existed, as well in the form of a life vessel. It was inevitable that the Empire would soon send investigators. With Lord Kane absent, the timing could hardly have been worse. Still, it was Varkan's duty to report this to the capital. Though they were fortunate overall, had the lair gone undiscovered, the consequences would have been disastrous. Cardos was likely preparing his resurrection. Fettel had once again accomplished something extraordinary. He deserved a reward befitting such an achievement. Lord Varkan struggled to think of anything worthy of the strange barbarian. The following day, the Lord awoke and slipped into his robe as morning began. A maid burst in to announce the arrival of Lord Aquas, Inquisitor of the Sun God. Varkan hastily dressed properly and greeted the honored visitor. Aniclimax, the Sun God's Inquisitor, carried an overwhelming presence. He invited her to sit, and an uneasy silence followed. Lord Luke Varkan nervously introduced himself and thanked her for coming so suddenly. Aquas, Inquisitor of the Sun God, Judge of Heresy. She introduced herself with authority, famed as the youngest to hold the title. She had personally executed warlocks and dismantled massive cult rituals alone, celebrated as the strongest inquisitor alive. Even the Empire deferred to her influence. Her authority dwarfed that of a provincial lord like Lute. Why such a figure traveled to this remote countryside was baffling. Varkan recounted the hidden dungeon incident and assured her it was resolved, then asked her purpose. He inquired about the true reason for her visit. She stated she came to discuss a divine oracle concerning the region. Before revealing it, she wanted to hear of recent events. With no choice, Varkan explained everything about the barbarian who slew the lich. He confirmed the entity was once Cardos Bernulus Kesses. To support the claim, he revealed the phylactery that held Cardos' soul. Even the Inquisitor was visibly shaken. Her hand instinctively clenched around her sun pendant. Fear stirred as she considered what had occurred in this land. She then asked darkly whether the barbarian was still present. Varkan answered honestly that the man remained within the territory. He remained doubtful that Cardos had truly fallen so easily. Varkan added that the barbarian also defeated Lord Kane fairly, marking a new rising power. Aquas demanded to know the barbarian's tribe of origin. When the White Wastelands were mentioned, she envisioned a demon realm entity, beings usually forbidden from crossing realms. Now she suspected the barbarian was central to her mission. She formally requested a meeting with the mysterious man. Meanwhile, Cottle was preoccupied with another shiny curiosity. Crystal taken from the scepter appeared to be a magic support artifact, best examined by a mage layer. Realizing it was time to head out, he recalled earlier that day, the first captain formally asked him to meet the Sun God's Inquisitor at the church. He also reminded the barbarian to behave respectfully toward the lady when they finally met. After preparing his gear, he headed straight to the church for the arranged appointment. In this world, gods are undeniably real, omnipresent entities who grant power to those they favor and occasionally walk among mortals. People erected shrines and churches to worship them and gather in shared devotion. Standing before the Church of the Sun God, Fiddle was struck speechless by its overwhelming scale and splendor. The first captain explained how the meeting would proceed and assured him someone would guide him inside. Upon stepping through the entrance, Cuddle found himself marveling at the church's interior. It was perfectly befitting for a deity associated with the sun. 3 nuns of the faith greeted him politely, and with warmth, informed him that Inquisitor Aquas was already waiting. Slightly awkward, he followed the nun without protest. She guided him deeper into the inner sanctum. There he saw the youngest Inquisitor of the Sun God, composed and dignified, while he remained casually amused. Witnessing someone attain such a high religious rank at such a young age, he immediately understood that she must be exceptionally capable. Fleeting, mysterious smile from Kettle momentarily unsettled the Inquisitor. Wasting no time, Kettle directly asked why this meeting had been arranged. As expected, she questioned him about the recent dungeon incident, where the infamous Cardus was supposedly defeated. In her view, only legendary heroes could hope to oppose such a catastrophic force. Kettle understood her skepticism but explained that the Cardus he encountered was merely a clumsy skeleton who destroyed himself. He noticed her lingering doubts yet could only recount events as he experienced them. To resolve the uncertainty, Aquas suggested allowing her god to bear witness to their discussion. Any lies spoken before a deity would provoke divine punishment, essentially a holy lie detector. Given her understanding of typical barbarians, she expected resistance, though this man defied expectations. Kettle eagerly agreed, seeing it as a rare chance to experience divine power firsthand. His enthusiasm confused her more than refusal ever would have. Most people grew uneasy when told a god was observing them, but Kettle had nothing he felt the need to conceal. Deception simply wasn't in his nature. With his consent given, Inquisitor Aquas began the ritual. He offered prayers to the sun god who watches from above all, the eternal guardian of the sun itself, whose omniscient gaze reveals all falsehoods within its reach. A brilliant column of sunlight poured into the church, filling the space with divine awareness, thrilling Kettle like something from a fantasy tale. The sensation felt strange and indescribable. He sensed a colossal presence beyond the light, something far beyond human comprehension. Kettle could tell the divine gaze regarded him with mild confusion. Two figures sat facing one another as a god's presence saturated the chamber. Aquas was relieved that no divine punishment had been triggered. It meant they could now speak freely without deceit. Within the pillar of light, falsehoods were impossible. Kettle folded his arms, nodded, and prepared for honest discussion. Their true conversation began under the sun god's watchful eye. Kettle calmly described clearing the dungeon and the lich's self-destruction, and the lack of reaction made Aquas think him extraordinarily fortunate. He assumed Cardus had exhausted himself preparing resurrection, otherwise Kettle would not have survived. Thoughts were interrupted when Kettle asked if her doubts were settled. She confirmed they were and apologized, while Kettle smiled, admitting he found the ordeal amusing. Aquas then questioned whether he truly hailed from the white snowfield. Kettle answered plainly that he did, and even repeated it when she asked again. This revelation shocked her, implying he came from the demon realm, and might match ancient imperial legends. Turning the tables, Kettle asked her why she had come here, catching her off guard. Carefully, she claimed the visit was for personal reasons. His expression sharpened as he asked if she merely wanted to confirm whether he was an impure being. Thence, she tried to evade the question, saying she didn't follow his implication. Kettle remarked that it seemed excessive for a god to observe someone simply to verify a lie. She realized denial was impossible under divine scrutiny. Admitting he was right, she was then asked if that had been her goal all along. Aquas denied it, explaining he was not her original focus. She revealed a divine oracle had led her here, and she initially suspected him briefly. She apologized again for concealing her true intent. Kettle responded calmly, saying he found the entire affair intriguing. He then asked about the oracle itself, making her hesitate due to its secrecy. Despite this, she shared the oracle's message, though its contents remain unknown. Kettle appeared quietly shaken by what he heard as the scene fades. The next scene shows Aquas by a church window as footsteps approach. She turns to see the territorial lord entering. Gently asks whether something is troubling her. She softly replies that she has met the barbarian, and that the encounter only deepened her uncertainty. She confirms he truly originates from the demon realm's white snowfield. The lord is shocked, and she adds that no intelligence has ever emerged from that region. Internally, he hopes this connection remains rumor, as its spread would shake the world. May desire access to the snowfield, especially the emperor, whose involvement would cause chaos. She reassures him that there is no need for immediate concern. The church will handle the lich issue and keep Kettle's existence concealed. Relieved, the lord asks if all snowfield barbarians resemble Kettle. She replies that it is unlikely, otherwise the world would already be conquered. The lord muses that barbarians are strong yet usually lack intelligence. He shudders at the thought of them possessing both strength and intellect. Regaining focus, he asks about rumors of a uniquely intelligent barbarian king. Aquas confirms meeting him once and agrees he is unlike the others. The lord ponders a meeting between Kettle and that king, which she immediately dismisses. She reflects that relations between barbarians and divine servants have always been strained, and the rise of barbarian power cannot be ignored. The lord asks about the oracle, curious why the meeting was kept secret. She replies that she only needed to verify one thing. When pressed, she explained she needed to know if Kettle was truly human or merely appeared so. He repeats the oracle's message once more, though its meaning remains concealed from us. The lord looks equally stunned upon hearing it. The scene shifts to his private chamber, as he asks Kettle how he is doing. Kettle replies that he is fine, and wonders why he was summoned. The lord admits there is a matter to discuss, and clarifies that while it isn't exactly an apology, he has prepared a modest reward for defending the territory. He quietly places a pouch on the table, drawing Cattle's curiosity. Cattle is mildly surprised to see that it is made of leather. Noticing his reaction, the Lord explains it is no ordinary pouch and urges him to inspect it himself. He picks it up and immediately senses that the item is far from ordinary. Lord Barkin explains that it is an artifact storage bag capable of holding numerous items within its internal space. He adds that the interior is nearly as spacious as the reception hall they are currently in. The revelation leaves the Barbarian stunned, as this is the first genuine artifact he has ever possessed. The Lord continues, stating that anything can be stored inside regardless of size, prompting Cattle to test it immediately. He raises his massive battle axe, questioning how such a bulky weapon could possibly fit through the small opening. In an instant the axe is swallowed by the pouch, leaving him speechless, and the Lord explains retrieval requires only reaching in while visualizing the item. Following the instructions, Cattle pulls the axe back out effortlessly, his eyes shining with excitement. The Lord declares the artifact his reward for protecting the territory, and considers the matter concluded. Yet unease lingers in his thoughts, as the prophecy remains unresolved and his distant lands weigh on his mind. The Swordmaster's warning echoes within him, speaking of demon realm entities appearing and an approaching calamity. The Lord links these signs to the prophecy, and recalls Ekwe's words, that a great evil would arise here and eventually engulf the entire world, as foretold by the oracle. Around the same period, troubling truths about the Varkan territory begin emerging, with villages scattered across the region. Suddenly one village goes silent, initially dismissed as a minor issue. Concern grows when emissaries from a neighboring village vanish without returning. Official guards are dispatched next, only to disappear as well. At that point, the Lord realizes a grave threat is unfolding. Some time later, at the mercenary guild, Rosa informs Cattle of an urgent request from Lord Barkin. She explains the assignment involves investigating a village that has lost all contact. The task is simply to confirm the situation, yet the unusually high reward hints at danger. Finding the mission intriguing, Kettle accepts without hesitation. Soon after, a gathering is organized for the expedition. A priestess also arrives to participate in the mission. Spotting her, Cattle approaches casually. She looks surprised to see him, quickly noticing his newly tailored outfit. He explains his snowfield clothes wore out, so he commissioned a fresh design himself. The priestess asks if he has accepted the mission as well, and he confirms it. He remarks that such an interesting job is impossible to refuse, making her think how unusual he truly is. Cattle then asks why she is alone and where Tyrannus and Cassina are. He suspects they declined after reviewing the mission details. Glancing around the hall, Cattle notices far fewer participants than expected. He assumed high pay and low difficulty would attract many, yet fewer than 10 showed up. The priestess explains that despite appearances, the mission carries significant risk. She shares a rumor that even dispatch guards never returned, proving the danger. Even so, Cattle notes the turnout still seems unusually small. Hesitant, the priestess reveals another reason. She explains it involves Lady Ekwas, which surprises him. Apparently Ekwas herself, a heretic inquisitor of the sun god, is joining the mission. Few mercenaries dare work near her, and the priestess admits fearing sudden execution. Cattle reassures her calmly, insisting nothing of the sort will happen and describing Ekwas as courteous. When pressed further, he even states that the inquisitor is his friend. The priestess struggles to believe a barbarian could befriend a heretic inquisitor. At that moment, Cattle greets Ekwas warmly, while she responds coldly, denying any friendship. Laughing it off, he suggests they become friends starring Nell. The inquisitor ignores him entirely. She instead questions the priestess about her faith in Lady Calrosia. Cattle is surprised that Ekwas recognizes her. Ekwas then asks why the priestess is participating. Calrosia's followers are supposedly resting, with only elites active. She quickly withdraws her suspicion, assuming she may be mistaken. After all, she cannot know every inner detail of all faiths. At that moment, the guard captain arrives with his troops. Cattle recognizes him instantly and greets him enthusiastically. Captain formally welcomes everyone, confirms attendance, and announces the mission start. The group begins moving out together. With everyone assembled, Cattle remarks that it feels like the start of a raid, and asks Ekwas if the foretold time has come. She appears slightly startled and pauses, admitting she cannot say for sure, as prophecies never specify timing, and the village might have mundane issues. Cattle smiles, replying that the possibility still exists. Eventually, the group reaches the village. Cattle and the priestess stop abruptly, shocked by the sight before them. A quiet, seemingly peaceful village stands untouched. The captain surveys the area carefully, unsettled by the unnatural silence. He asks Ekwas if she senses anything, as she calmly reports nothing. The captain concludes the villagers may have fled. He orders the group to split up and search thoroughly. Everyone acknowledges, and begins investigating. Still, the captain feels uneasy, as the village could barely house 100 residents. Yet every single one vanished without trace, suggesting hidden clues. During this search, One member freezes upon entering a house. His eyes widen at the sight of food set neatly on the table. He calls the captain over immediately. At first, the captain assumes the villagers fled suddenly, but the man adds that the food is still warm. The captain's expression turns to shock. He steps inside, staring at the steaming meal despite days of lost contact. Guards had been sent earlier, and never returned either. Asked about traces of villagers, the answer is no signs of escape, hiding, or tracks. Still, the captain orders the search to continue. Everywhere they look, daily life remains frozen in time. Not a single human is found, and reports from other teams match. Signs of living remain, yet no sign of departure exists. Finally, he turns to Aquaz, asking for insights. Distressed, she admits she has none. He then asks Cattle the same question, but Cattle also reports finding nothing. Frustrated, the captain reacts when Cattle suggests questioning someone who actually knows. Words catch him completely off guard. Cattle explains they are not alone, and another presence stands among them. The captain's heart pounds as he looks at Cattle in confusion. Cattle points out a woman not belonging to their group who appeared unnoticed. The mysterious woman smiles faintly, impressed that Cattle saw through her disguise. Cattle replies that noticing a sudden stranger is only natural. The woman chuckles softly, noting that few ever recognize her presence. Not even the Sun God's Inquisitor managed to notice her presence. She observes carefully, and notes that the Barbarian shows no sign of any strange awakening. She then demands to know exactly who he is. Before Cattle can respond, the guard captain suddenly yells for everyone to retreat, his face twisted with visible panic. Aquaz mutters that she senses nothing at all, not even the faintest presence. Both the captain and the priestess feel their blood run cold. If even the church's highest inquisitor cannot sense her, then either she is not evil at all or she is an undetectable nightmare of unimaginable level. The mysterious woman clicks her tongue in mild annoyance, admitting she wanted to secretly trail them and survey the land. Her features suddenly distort, as she begins shedding her disguise. Once the transformation is complete, she flashes a cruel smile and proclaims she will drag the barbarian to hell as her personal slave. Revealing her horrific true form, the demoness unleashes a massive sphere of destructive purple energy. Everyone stares in frozen disbelief as she rises effortlessly into the air before them. Guard captain screams for everyone to flee and save themselves, but it quickly becomes clear that escape is impossible. A transparent magical barrier traps them all, and every attempt to break it fails. The demoness declares the village under her dominion, announcing that none may escape her control. With a twisted grin, she announces that everyone present is now her prey. Shaking with fear, the priestess confesses that this being is a named demon, among the most dangerous of all. She prays desperately for divine salvation. Cattle gently pats her head, and calmly assures her that he will not leave her side. He then asks what exactly makes a named demon different from others. The trembling voice. She explains that most demons are nothing more than weak fragments, but a few are true originals born from pure darkness. These demons claim names of their own, and even the weakest among them can destabilize an entire kingdom. Cattle realizes the demon before them is one of those terrifying beings. By her distinctive horns, the priestess identifies her as Asura, a legendary demoness from ancient times. Hearing this, Cattle asks whether brute force can shatter the barrier, and the priestess despairingly says no. The land is already her domain, and the only escape is defeating her, which borders on impossible. However, the moment Cattle touches the barrier, crack begins spreading across it. He chuckles softly and decides to watch for now, reassuring the stunned priestess with a relaxed smile. Meanwhile, the demon mocks the Inquisitor for failing to see through her deception. Aquaz realizes the village's signs of life were nothing but illusions, a demonic trap designed to lure and ensnare humans. Furious, she denounces the demon as vile and abhorrent. Asura remains entirely unfazed. Meanwhile, Cattle watches the spectacle as if enjoying a show, popcorn and all. Aquaz reflects that summoning a named demon requires countless souls, and a single village should barely suffice. Turning an entire region into a domain unnoticed should have been impossible. He is stunned by how the demon infiltrated the world so cleanly, while Asura mocks her refusal to explain. Enraged, the Inquisitor condemns the demon for defiling holy land. The demoness bursts into mocking laughter. He retaliates by calling Aquaz a blind hound of the gods and questions her god's ability to save her. Growing serious, the demon declares that cracks are spreading through reality, and that the world no longer belongs solely to gods and humans. She recounts an ancient war where gods and humans once battled evil together, eventually sealing it away in distant dimensions. She proudly names herself the Demon of Gravity, claiming she has waited centuries for this moment. She vows to erase past humiliation and drown the world in darkness. Aquaz snaps back that the world belongs to gods and humans, and such filth must return to the abyss. She begins a sacred ritual, falling upon her god as radiant golden light engulfs her. She transforms into a divine warrior before their eyes. Cattle notes that enemies really never interrupt transformations. When it ends, she stands clad in brilliant golden armor like a holy knight. Asura finds the display amusing, and conjures a massive crystalline scythe. Both finish powering up. The real fight begins. The Inquisitor charges forward with blinding speed. Their collision unleashes a violent explosion that shakes the ground. Both fighters are blown backward by the impact. Demoness remains standing and mocks the Inquisitor for lacking combat etiquette. Equus glares at her with seething fury, digs her feet into the ground and launches herself again. The demon remains utterly fearless, then vanishes instantly, leaving only an afterimage. Unable to track her, the divine warrior is completely outmaneuvered. The demon reappears behind her, forcing a split-second reaction. Equus blocks with her shield as sparks erupt. Asura smirks, signaling her imminent defeat. She gathers concentrated demonic energy at her fingertips and fires it forward. Equus strains against the force as it steadily pushes her back. Pressure overwhelms her and shatters her defense, and as it breaks, she begins chanting holy scripture. Brilliant light erupts, forming a radiant barrier. A sudden defense forces the demoness to retreat, allowing the Inquisitor to regain her footing. Asura admits surprise at her mastery despite her young age, and openly acknowledges her skill. Equus continues chanting, invoking scripture meant to burn away evil. She launches the attack, but the demon reacts instantly, meeting it head-on with demonic power. Their attacks collide violently, and the demon manages to deflect the holy light. Equus struggles, stunned by how cleanly her attack was countered. They exchange relentless full-force blows, their weapons clashing repeatedly. Holy light and demonic darkness collide so fiercely that the surrounding area begins to fracture. The priestess trembles under the shockwaves. Some party members retreat, unable to endure the pressure. The violent exchange continues without pause. Holy and demonic energies saturate the air, growing overwhelming. Battle watches with excitement, finding the battle thoroughly entertaining. Priestess nervously asks whether he can help Lady Equus. Our boy answers with composure, saying he could assist, then lightly questions what reason he has to do so. His reply leaves the priestess utterly taken aback. He explains that stepping in would spoil the duel, though he admits he hopes to face a demon himself one day. For the moment, he would rather sit back and savor the spectacle. The priestess can only stand there in disbelief, wondering why events are unfolding so wrongly. She is left confused. Meanwhile, the Divine Knight and the demonic foe keep trading devastating strikes. At one exchange, both fighters are knocked away when their attacks collide. Asura admits the Inquisitor truly earns her title as the God's Hound, though she trusts her own power. The battle is turning against her. Pressure mounts as the Inquisitor steadily forces her backward. The demoness senses that continuing this way will only drag the fight out endlessly. She therefore chooses to alter her approach to seize control. A sudden shift in movement changes the flow of the fight. Equus immediately grasps what she is aiming for. Rather than confronting the Inquisitor head-on, she rushes straight toward the party members, leaving them no time to react. The Divine Knight intervenes at the last instant, blocking the strike and protecting them all. The group stands paralyzed, shaking as they witness a clash between Holy Champion and named Demon. After this maneuver, the Inquisitor finds defending herself increasingly difficult and is driven to endlessly parry the demon girl's relentless assault. Anger boiling over, she spits a curse at the demon. Asura answers with cruel laughter, reminding her that demons care nothing for fairness. The Inquisitor's fury only intensifies. She begins reciting another sacred verse, shaping a holy boundary around herself. She urgently tells the party to retreat into the consecrated area. They hurry inside, expressing thanks as the demon girl observes them with a self-satisfied grin. She sneers at the supposed waste of such valuable scripture. Provoked beyond restraint, the Inquisitor advances with killing intent. Demoness eagerly steps forward to meet her. Equus tightens her grip and unleashes a precise holy slash. Demoness bats it aside with ease, twisting through the air with acrobatic grace. Standing before her, she mocks the girl, saying no one will ever honor her noble sacrifice. She adds that defeat would stain the sun god's name. Victory would boost both her own fame and her god's reach. Yet to achieve it, she must drop the party's protective barrier. The girl grows wary as well as furious, sensing an obvious snare. She refuses the bait and readies herself for another exchange. Without warning, an overwhelming tide of demonic energy floods the area. She barely holds it back with her shield as Demoness rises into the air, shrouded entirely in dark power. A heartbeat later, she feels something massive hurtling toward her. Asura suddenly appears directly before her. A violent explosion erupts between them. The girl is shoved back, digging in her heels to stay upright. She is stunned when the demoness presses on without slowing. The demon girl unleashes writhing tendrils of demonic force. They close in on the Inquisitor from every side. Driven to the brink, she starts chanting holy words. The demoness bursts from the energy beside her, clearly aiming to silence her. She slams Equus into the ground and clamps a hand over her mouth to stop the chant. Then she lifts her weapon, ready to finish it. The girl barely raises her shield in time to intercept the blow. Cracks race across it, making defense almost impossible. Smiling smugly, the demoness shatters the shield and snaps her fingers. Colossal burst of demonic power erupts forth. Chains of energy bind the Inquisitor as she is struck head-on. She screams as her holy barrier collapses completely. The party quakes in fear, knowing they cannot last long without her protection. Seeing this, the demon girl laughs, and declares them all her dessert. But first, she intends to savor the god's loyal hunting dog. Just as she prepares to strike, a voice orders her to stop. It is Cuddle, who calmly tells her this has gone far enough. The demoness freezes in astonishment. She cannot tell when he arrived or why she sensed nothing. In an instant, he seizes her and hurls her skyward with effortless strength. She crashes down violently, pain ripping through her. He then turns to the Inquisitor and asks if she is unharmed. She is unable to answer, still reeling. Her thoughts drift to the memory of this same warrior defeating Swordmaster Cain. Meanwhile, Ashijar's fury detonates as her eyes blaze crimson. Both the Barbarian and the Inquisitor face her as she rises again. She hurls vicious insults at our boy, enraged that he dared interrupt her feast. He stands relaxed with crossed arms, stating the Inquisitor is his friend, and he will not let her die. The demon girl sneers that she planned to make him her plaything. He answers instantly that he has no interest in that role. Grinning coldly, she lifts her weapon and declares he should die for his defiance. The Inquisitor struggles to her feet and urges the Barbarian to flee. He warns him that the demoness is beyond his ability. Our boy replies evenly that he is strong enough. She insists that brute force alone means nothing. Only divine power can banish demons, a law as old as gods and fiends themselves, especially within a demonic domain where mortals stand no chance. Our boy pauses to consider her words. He then notes that she hardly looks capable of continuing. She answers that she lives in service to her god and must oppose the demoness regardless of the cost. Moved by her resolve, he gently pats her head and praises her dedication. Stepping forward casually, he tells her to leave the rest to him, leaving her speechless. He admits he has always wanted to face a demon himself. Ashijar chuckles softly, doubting his chances, but he answers with a taunt, inviting her to find out. She licks her lips, agreeing that it sounds entertaining. In the next instant, she emerges from a rift directly before Cuddle. The Inquisitor watches in stunned disbelief. She never expected such speed, yet before she can reach him, he tightens his fist and strikes her head with a lightning-fast punch. The demoness has no time to react as her head is obliterated. Sight leaves the Inquisitor completely motionless. With only his bare hand, our boy crushed the demoness' head as easily as rotten fruit. Seconds later, he senses subtle movement stirring within the demoness' body. Violent streams of dark energy coil around her neck as her severed head begins to reform. He gives a faint smile, remarking that her head regenerates even after total destruction. She glares at him with fury and disbelief, realizing no ordinary human could be capable of this. Calm as ever, our boy introduces himself as nothing more than a simple barbarian. She refuses to accept such an explanation. Her demonic perception detects no aura, sorcery, or mystical presence coming from him. Confounded, she wonders how such monstrous strength can exist without supernatural force. To probe his limits, she opens a demonic gate behind him. A cruel smile spreads across her face. She darts through the portal and strikes from behind, confident his fragile human body will shatter. However, her grin vanishes as the barbarian slams a cannon-like punch straight into her chest. Blackened blood sprays violently from her mouth. The first time, genuine pain tears through her demonic flesh. Her body is hurled away like a speck tossed by a raging storm. A gaping hole is left carved through her chest. She crashes back to the ground. The impact gouges out a shallow crater beneath her. Shaking, she cannot grasp how a single punch holds such ruinous force. Our boy quietly watches as her body regenerates yet again. At last she understands the dreadful truth. His power is not magic or aura but raw, absolute physical strength. Curious about her rapid healing, Cuddle acts without hesitation. He stumps the ground, sending shock waves that fracture the surrounding stone. In a blink, he rockets toward her at absurd speed. The demon girl barely manages to raise her guard and summons her demonic hammer just before he reaches her. A savage punch crashes directly into her face. Her headless body is slammed into the earth once more. Thick dark energy erupts from her neck as a heavy demonic aura cloaks her body. The barbarian watches in astonishment as within moments, her head reforms again and she stands fully restored. He smiles faintly, noticing the head always returns and suspecting it may be her core. Humiliated and enraged, Ashijar scoffs at the idea that sheer strength could defeat her. She can tell the barbarian still has not revealed his full power. With arrogant pride, she proclaims herself the demoness who governs gravity. She demands to know how he dares challenge her using nothing but brute force. Our boy studies her in silence for a brief moment. Then he casually remarks that she is unimpressive. Those few words completely shatter her demonic arrogance. Screaming in fury, she unleashes her true might. Dark gravitational power pools within her hands and takes shape as a massive black warhammer. swung with force capable of crushing boulders. He stops the blow effortlessly with his bare hand. She freezes in disbelief as his grip nullifies its gravity. Then with one punch, he smashes the weapon apart and shatters her head for the third time. As she regenerates once more, shock overwhelms her. Her gravity strike can compress castle walls into a single blow. Yet this so-called ordinary barbarian has blocked it and destroyed her weapon without magic. Roaring in rage, she fires an enormous beam of dark energy, certain it will obliterate him. The barbarian does not retreat. He plants his feet and punches straight into the beam, triggering a blinding explosion of white light. Sheer force erases the attack completely. Resulting shockwave slams violently into Asura. From afar, Akuz watches in terror, unable to comprehend what she is seeing. Legends claim this demoness once erased an entire kingdom, yet now she is being crushed by bare fists. Even under his relentless assault, our boy notices her body continues to regenerate. Realizing brute force alone may never fully kill her, the demon girl senses his realization. A sly smile curls across her face. This is the first time she has ever been pushed so far. She admits his overwhelming strength and once more questions his true identity. He calmly repeats that he is merely a barbarian. She knows it is false, yet the fear and thrill only excite her further. Choosing a final test, her body melts into flowing dark energy, slipping from beneath his feet before surging skyward. Adel and Akuz stare upward in shock. The dark energy gathers into a massive black sphere, ripping stones apart and dragging debris into its pull. From above, the demoness taunts the barbarian, declaring she will tear him apart with her full power. She channels everything she has into her most lethal attack, forging dark gravity into countless razor-sharp spikes aimed below. Even then, he shows no sign of concern. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor recognizes the grave danger. She knows raw strength alone cannot stop it, and that divine power is required. Smiling cruelly, the demoness releases her final command. Endless black thorns rain from the sky, yet our boy remains completely still. He whirls his arms at impossible speed. A violent wind barrier forms, shredding every thorn and shielding him entirely. Witnessing this, Asura screams in disbelief, unable to fathom what he truly is. Her shock deepens when our boy suddenly lunges forward, moving faster than the speed of sound. At that precise moment, the Inquisitor seizes her chance. She chants another sacred verse, proclaiming divine light will erase all evil. The holy energy condenses into an axe that lands in his hands, making him wonder if it is a divine gift. She shouts that every last bit of her divine power is in it, and urges him to end the demoness. Hearing this, he grips the axe firmly and declares the battle finished. He brings the axe down in a devastating vertical strike. He cleaves effortlessly through Asura's demonic body. In that instant, she fully accepts her defeat. Divine light scorches her inside and out, and she screams in true agony for the first time. Her body soon collapses, utterly lifeless. Adel walks over calmly and remarks that the fight was mildly enjoyable. With her final breaths, the demoness bitterly admits the humiliation of being sent back to hell. Still, she claims it is not a total loss, having confirmed his existence. She fades, she asks his name, and he answers without hesitation. Akuz screams in panic, begging him to stop, but it is already too late. Demon girl releases a broken, maddened laugh. Using her final strength, she opens an unseen channel and commands all demons to carve the name Adel the Barbarian into their memories. The Inquisitor cries out in despair as the demoness orders her followers to consume her memories after her death, and with one final unhinged laugh, she claims she will learn everything about him. She proclaims that the barbarian now belongs to the world of demons. In that instant, dreadful demonic presences invade his mind. He freezes in confusion, trying to grasp what is happening. Inside his inner realm, colossal demonic forms emerge, wraithing like cosmic parasites. Yet his consciousness crushes them with ease, as if they are utterly insignificant. He calmly asks the dying demoness what she did, having briefly sensed something intrude into his body. Paralyzed in shock, she cannot understand why the demonic corruption meant to consume him entirely has no effect at all. She is left speechless. Our boy steps on the remnants of her body and grinds it into nothing, erasing her existence completely. Akuz screams in disbelief, and the priestess reacts with the same stunned horror. As the violet barrier vanishes with the demoness' death, the barbarian stretches and smiles faintly in satisfaction. He casually asks the girl whether the mission is finally over. News spreads rapidly throughout the Gehenta kingdom, especially in the remote region of Barkan, where contact with the village was suddenly lost. Whispers spread that a terrifying demoness ravaged the area. Soon after, newspapers named demoness Asura as the source of the catastrophe. The territory's ruler sits alone in his office, his heart heavy with grief and shock. He wonders how such a nightmare could strike his land. However, he clings to hope, believing the sun god's inquisitor forced the demoness back temporarily, buying precious time to recover and plan. Focus returns to our boy as he remarks that the territory seems deeply shaken. With her eyes still shut, the inquisitor replies that such a reaction is only natural given the scale of the incident. He suddenly rises to leave, prompting him to suggest she rest longer since her body is still healing. She refuses, insisting she must return to the Holy Land to report everything. Yahello accepts, and respects her resolve. Without facing him, she softly calls his name, catching him off guard. He bows deeply and offers sincere thanks. She admits that without his help, she would have remained trapped by the demoness. He nods and replies gently that he simply helped a friend. Curious, he asks if that means they are friends now. He looks surprised at the thought of a barbarian befriending a sun god inquisitor. She reminds him of her sacred duty and asks seriously if he still wants her friendship. He asks if there is any reason they should not be friends. After a brief pause, she admits there truly is no reason. Hearing that, he smiles and declares them friends. She responds with a small, genuine smile. He then confesses curiosity about something, prompting her to ask what it is. He asks whether revealing one's true name to a demon is truly forbidden. She nods firmly and explains it is absolutely true, as demons use names for a magic called branding. This branding places an unseen dark seal upon the soul, acting as a beacon to evil beings, turning the marked individual into perpetual prey, unless the mark is removed through ancient baptism or by death itself. Confused, he asks if he has been branded. She reassures him that he bears no such mark, and was fortunate. However, she warns that his name is now known in hell, allowing demons to recognize him. Without a mark, they cannot track him unless they encounter him directly. She privately knows he has been singled out. Still, with no means to pursue him, it is not an immediate danger. He reflects on the battle, noting it was strange that sheer strength could not fully kill the demoness. Equize explains that demons differ fundamentally from normal beings and are shrouded in mystery. She recounts how the gods first created humanity and granted them life. Humans were impulsive and flawed, yet the gods chose not to interfere. Later, invaders from another realm massacred humanity, forcing the gods to descend, name them demons, and confront them. The demons were sealed back into their own world. With divine aid, human civilization regained peace and flourished. Over time, for unknown reasons, demons began meddling once more. Because only divine power can truly defeat demons, the gods granted fragments of their strength to loyal followers to fight back. Our boy realizes demons cannot be fully destroyed since they originate from another dimension. She confirms this, explaining that this world cannot fully affect beings that do not belong to it. He worries that continued appearances of such beings endanger everyone. She explains that powerful named demons rarely cross over. Recently, disturbances and abnormal dungeon cycles suggest the sealed demon world is influencing this realm again, a change that began exactly 1 year ago. Paddle's eyes widen as he recalls that this coincides with the start of his final Snowfield quest. After their long discussion, she thanks him once more and prepares to depart. She invites him to visit her order someday, assuring him he will always be welcome. He smiles and promises that he will. The scene fades as the carriage rolls onward. Inside, she reflects that her body has not fully recovered, yet she must still report everything to the saintess. Her thoughts return to him. She wonders why the sun god never foretold the existence of such a mysterious barbarian. Elsewhere, within the Empire's Grand Palace, Master Cain walks through an opulent corridor. He is utterly drained after a long audience with the Emperor. Suddenly, a voice echoes through the hall, casually noting that Cain appears especially worn down today. He instantly goes on guard and turns to see a man with long black hair, whom he recognizes immediately. It is the Grand Master of the Magic Tower, home to the world's strongest mages. Calmly, the Tower Master asks why Cain is here. Cain explains he has come to submit a full report on his recent mission. Hearing this, the man asks if he refers to the reconnaissance of the demon world, specifically the Forest of Silence. He asks what that place was like. Cain's expression darkens as he describes it as utterly unnatural, defying all known laws. True to its name, not a single sound exists there, and even mystical detection fails. Even shouting produces no vibration. Within that silence, their soldiers vanished one after another. He calls the place cursed and revolting. He questions why the Emperor is obsessed with conquering the demon world, while the Tower Master says those in power are hard to understand. Still, the Tower Master admits his own fascination with that realm. Its secrets captivate him deeply. However, Cain admits he feels the opposite, and wishes to stay far away. Before he can continue, Tower Master snaps his fingers, forming a glowing magic circle beneath them. In an instant, their bodies dissolve into light and vanish. They reappear in a vast space filled with countless stars. Cain recognizes spatial magic immediately, and asks what the Tower Master intends. The man smiles and casually asks whether Cain encountered a remarkable individual on his mission. Cain's expression freezes. He realizes an observation spell was placed on him and demands to know when. The Tower Master laughs, admitting he cast it during their last meeting out of curiosity. Cain sighs and asks what else he wants to know now that he has seen everything. The Tower Master changes the subject, asking Cain's opinion of the Barbarian of the White Snowfield. Cain admits he is unsure what to think of that barbarian. Tower Master casually adds that this same barbarian defeated a veteran sword master and crushed the Lich Kartas like an insect. Kane is stunned, unaware Cuddle killed the Lich, and the Tower Master explains it is yet to be officially confirmed. Rumors have already circulated through the Magic Tower that Kartas' revival ultimately failed. He adds that he personally visited the Lich's lair to offer his respects, as the Lich was among the last remaining friends he had. Kane is surprised to discover that even the Tower Master is capable of feeling sorrow. Tower Master reflects calmly that after such a long life, companionship becomes essential. He casually notes that no valuable relics were found in the Lich's domain. Growing wary, the old man asks whether the artifacts had already been taken at the time of the Lich's death. The Tower Master explains that most were recovered, but the most important artifact remains missing. He then asks if Kane truly believes the barbarian defeated Kartas on his own. Kane answers quietly that he does, because if it was that man, such a feat is believable. Hearing this, the Tower Master fixes him with a stare and asks why the Emperor has not been informed. Kane replies coldly that there is no need, believing the Emperor already treats talented people as expendable tools. If the Emperor learns of the barbarian, a violent clash is inevitable. One follows only his will, the other seeks absolute control, and such a conflict would engulf the kingdom in flames. Intrigued, the Tower Master asks if Kane believes the barbarian could oppose the Empire alone. After reflection, Kane admits the result is uncertain. However, meeting the barbarian gave him the same sensation he once felt long ago. This realization even surprises the mage himself. He wonders if the barbarian belongs to the ranks of legendary heroes. Kane says it is too soon to decide, but the Tower Master has already begun forming plans involving him. The scene shifts to the bustling streets of Barkan territory. A woman walks ahead through the crowd. She suddenly stumbles, nearly falling, but our boy reacts instantly. He steps forward, catches her, reminds her gently to be careful, and checks if she is hurt. Normally, people scatter in fear when they see him. This time, the woman bows politely, thanks him, and continues on her way without fear. He pauses for a moment, feeling slightly puzzled. Looking around, he notices no one is staring at him as if he were a monster. For the first time, it seems people are no longer afraid of him, and he cannot understand why that is. Inside his office, the Lord of Barkan welcomes him, and asks if he is feeling better after narrowly avoiding a demon's brand. The barbarian replies calmly that nothing serious occurred, and admits he does not truly understand what the brand is. The Lord listens closely, thinking he always knew the barbarian was strong, but slaying a demoness is something else entirely. He stops himself from dwelling on it, and explains that Cuddle's situation has changed. When our boy asks if he means the people of the territory, the Lord nods, explaining the shift is due to rumors spreading rapidly. Guards and mercenaries who survived have begun speaking openly. According to the stories, after Equiz fell and everyone collapsed, only one man remained standing. When they awoke, they saw his axe glowing with divine light. People now believe the Inquisitor granted him divine power, and he is spoken of as the one who fought beside her. Our boy finally understands how the situation escalated. The Lord apologizes, saying the rumors spread across the territory before he could stop them. Yahello replies calmly that it does not bother him. It now explains why people no longer fear him. Lord Barkan agrees, saying people now view him as someone who stands against demons. The barbarian reflects briefly and realizes this is the true meaning of reputation. Later, at the Mercenary Guild, Rosa greets him warmly and congratulates him on his promotion. He is shocked to learn he advanced 3 ranks at once and is now officially C rank. The receptionist explains his achievement justified such a promotion. News genuinely brings him happiness. She adds that his new guild tag must be custom-made and will take time. From C rank onward, mercenaries are officially certified, meaning others must treat him with proper respect. She also notes this rank allows access to most capital cities and churches, except the imperial capital. Hearing this, he remarks that the empire seems especially restrictive. She explains access to the imperial capital is controlled by nobles, and no one truly knows what lies within. Everything people hear is based on terrifying rumors, making the capital more mysterious than the demon realm. Hearing this, he realizes just how enigmatic the imperial capital is. Rosa explains he can now accept nearly any request, and even enter a rank dungeons if he joins a party. He smiles and thinks about the many missions now open to him. Elsewhere, Tyrannus raises his drink and admits he never expected things to end this way. He asks if it is truly over, and our boy explains the Inquisitor confirmed the area is safe and deserves full credit. Upon hearing the demoness is defeated, the man exhales in relief. Hassan praises the Inquisitor, calling her exceptional for defeating a demon alone. Meanwhile, the priestess thinks quietly that she never lost consciousness that day. She witnessed everything, and the sight of the barbarian crushing the demoness is unforgettable. In her mind, Equiz only arrived at the end, while the real battle was fought by Cuddle. Hassan asks what he plans to do after his promotion. Our boy replies that nothing will change, and he will continue working as usual. Hassan praises his humility, impressed by how grounded he remains after such a feat. At the same time, the priestess silently warns herself not to be fooled, knowing he is not human. The barbarian then asks about their own plans. Hassan says he remains frank and lacks direction. He admits he once intended to live aimlessly until death, but after witnessing Kadal, he now wants to live earnestly. Tyrannus mocks him upon hearing this, joking that it took him long enough, and teasing him as a thief. They glare at each other as our boy turns to the priestess. She replies that she will continue serving Lady Colossi as well as always. He recalls hearing that Colossia's followers are on break, with only high-ranking members active. The priestess is startled, but quickly regains composure. She insists the Inquisitor must be mistaken, and claims she is only a simple priestess. He accepts her answer. However, she panics internally, wondering if he already knows the truth, and if he is merely pretending ignorance. Late at night, the mercenary guild is nearly empty. Rosa packs up, preparing to leave for the day. Door opens, and a hooded stranger enters, stating he wishes to submit a request. She looks at him tiredly, already dreading overtime, and asks what kind of request it is. The man explains it is an escort mission for 2 people, himself and a young girl. Rosa records the details and asks for their destination. He says the capital of the Danaan kingdom. She freezes in shock. Escorting someone from remote Barkan to such a distant capital is extremely unusual. She studies him carefully, and senses something off, though only suspicion lingers. Hesitantly, she accepts the request, and asks for identification. At the request, the man hesitates briefly, then places a metal card on the counter. The moment Rosa sees it, she understands. It is a mercenary guild token, something not easily obtained. She verifies his credentials, and asks for the commission payment. The man produces a single coin and offers it as payment. Upon closer inspection, she realizes it is pure gold. However, it is only enough to hire 1 guard. The man is left speechless. She explains that a mercenary must accompany them for the entire journey. The Danaan kingdom is extremely far, the danger is high, and the trip may take nearly a month. Naturally, the cost reflects this. The man pleads, asking if there is any alternative, as he needs at least 2 escorts. The girl explains that it is possible, though the mercenaries available would be far lower in rank. She adds that for dependable protection, at least 2-rank mercenaries should be hired. The man adjusts his position, insisting he needs someone capable. Hearing this, she repeats that the offered price only covers 1 person. When he presses again for alternatives, Rosa silently wonders why he seems so desperate. In a firm voice, she explains that escort jobs from such remote regions are already unpopular, but she will still try her best. The man lets out a heavy sigh and entrusts everything to her. After he leaves, she examines the gold coin more carefully, noting its small size but pure gold composition. Its surface has been deliberately filed to conceal its origin, warning her that this job may invite trouble. The scene transitions to nighttime at a tavern. The same man is seen knocking on the door of a private room. From inside, a young golden-haired woman asks who is there. The man introduces himself as Aaron and calls himself her loyal servant. Hearing his voice, she opens the door and lets him in. The young woman is named Aline. Inside, she anxiously asks how everything turned out. He explains the guild accepted the request. She exhales in relief, and asks how many guards they secured. Aaron hesitates before admitting they could only afford 1 mercenary, which makes her uneasy. He apologizes, explaining that their funds were insufficient, though she believes it is not his fault. He feels guilty, thinking he failed them by being tricked. They look at each other with watery eyes and break into loud sobbing, until a neighbor shouts for them to keep it down. They exchange helpless glances, realizing even crying freely is impossible. Line asks how long it will take, and he admits he has no idea since finding a reliable guard may take time. She accepts this and thanks him sincerely for trying. Time passes, and the scene shifts to the following night. Line waits nervously while Aaron feels ashamed that he still has not found a guard. Their food supplies are dwindling too, and he blames himself for it. Once again, she reassures him that none of this is his fault. Out of options, he suggests contacting the territory's lord. She immediately refuses, insisting no one can be trusted, and that hiring a guard is already dangerous. She reminds him why they fled their homeland, and how enemies can hide behind friendly faces. Even now there has been no word from their kingdom. He apologizes, admitting he has become too soft-hearted. The girl wonders aloud if the Danaan kingdom is truly safe. Answers confidently, believing the kingdom will protect them. He recalls the Danaan king's oath at the princess' birth and says they may even aid their revenge one day. Firmly believes the princess must live, for without her, their kingdom would be lost forever. Still doubtful, the princess questions whether trusting a single mercenary is wise. He reassures her that gold was paid and the guild will surely assign someone competent. Hearing this, she begins imagining who their guard might be, secretly hoping it will be a dashing knight like mercenary. Elsewhere, our boy sits alone in his room, bored with nothing to occupy his time. His thoughts drift to old companions who once stood beside him in the white snowfield, those who never feared him, and he believes they are unchanged even now. A sudden thought crosses his mind. wondering if his mission has finally ended. Ever since waking in the snowfield, the mission window followed him constantly. At first he thought it was a dream, but the freezing cold and monsters proved it was real. His first task was simply to survive 1 week. In that land, the system guided him. However, after leaving, no new missions appeared. Now that life is peaceful, boredom creeps in. Wonders if the system only functions within the white snowfield. Though uncertain, he feels grateful and chooses to enjoy this world on his own terms. The next day, the scene moves to the mercenary guild. Rosa hands him a fresh request. When he asks what kind of job it is, he explains that it is an escort mission. The journey will take several days, and preparations fall entirely on the mercenary. Hearing this, Kado remarks that it will not be easy. She agrees, but adds that the reward is generous. However, the job feels suspicious for such a simple escort. As she begins to say he can refuse, he interrupts, saying that the suspicion is what makes it appealing. While reviewing the details again, the destination name catches his eye. He recalls hearing it before from Mayana of the Akasha family. It was the girl he met in the snowy plains who said he would be welcome there. Seeing the chance, Cuddle decides to accept the request. At that moment, a bright blue system window suddenly appears before him. He freezes in shock as quest number 785 appears. It states the objective is to escort the client to the Denying Kingdom. He stands stunned, wondering why the system reactivated after so long. From the counter, Rosa notices his reaction and calls out. The scene shifts to the princess, who rushes to the door after hearing hurried footsteps. She opens it to find the old men entering, panting heavily. Alarmed, she asks if the trackers have found them. Aaron quickly explains that the request has been accepted. Confused at first, she listens as he excitedly says the only C-rank mercenary nearby took the job. Relief washes over her as her eyes brighten. The old man confirms it and says the meeting is tomorrow, urging her to rest, which she happily agrees to. Back with Cuddle, he stares quietly at the mission window floating before him. He keeps questioning why the system returned after so long. As he reflects, a realization begins to form. Maybe the missions were never limited to the snowfield. With a serious look, he considers that something deeper may be guiding the system. Outside the guild, dark clouds gather as storm brews. That night, Aline and the old man wait quietly inside the guild. While waiting, the princess wonders what kind of mercenary will arrive. She imagines sharp eyes and a body marked with scars. Suddenly, footsteps echo and the door swings open. Rosa announces that the mercenary has arrived. As the princess turns to look, she instantly understands. A terrifying giant stands there staring back at her. The sight frightens her so badly she freezes like a comic panel. The thought of such a man guarding her causes her to faint. As she collapses, the old man panics and demands to know who our boy is. Battle calmly surveys the situation, realizing he has startled them. He notes it has been a long time since someone looked so terrified of him. He asks Rosa if these two are his clients, and she confirms it. She formally introduces him as their assigned escort. Hearing this, the old man explodes in shock and anger, demanding a replacement. Rosa gives him a cold stare and asks if he doubts the guild's judgment. She sternly warns that questioning the decision voids the contract and triggers a refund. Desperate, Aaron insists he meant no offense. In that instant, the boy understands that he has once again turned into someone people instinctively fear. Without warning, the princess rises and declares that she accepts the guild's judgment. The barbarian pauses in mild surprise as she steps forward. She introduces herself politely and says she looks forward to cooperating with him. Setting shifts, revealing a quiet forest. The boy walks in front, while the others trail behind, then abruptly stops and remarks that they are spacing themselves too far apart and should stay closer. Both companions tense up, quickly insisting that nothing is wrong. They give uneasy laughs, and the elderly man adds that they have not noticed anything suspicious. The boy nods, puzzled but deciding to leave it alone as long as they feel at ease. He faces forward again and continues down the path. Keeping her distance, the princess washes his back and reflects on how events have finally led here. It all traces back to their encounter at the mercenary guild the previous night. The barbarian had stated clearly that they would need to place their trust in him from now on. He promised their safety as long as he stayed with them, and she nodded nervously while still unsure if trusting him was wise. Thoughts are interrupted when Kyle suddenly announces they will camp here for the night. He explains that darkness has fallen and visibility is poor. He adds that this delay is expected since they only departed in the evening. Though hesitant, they exchange looks and nod in agreement. Sensing their unease, the boy reflects on how deeply rooted their fear of barbarians truly is, far more than he imagined. Turning away, he accepts that this tension will not fade quickly. Even so, he begins preparing a place for them to rest. He reaches for a magical artifact he once received. From it, he produces an enormous tent and sets it up, leaving the princess and old man visibly stunned. Aaron blurts out his disbelief, questioning how a barbarian could ever own such an item. The boy answers calmly that it was earned through numerous completed jobs. Once again, they are left speechless. He explains there is only one tent, and they must share it, prompting the princess to ask hesitantly what he plans to do. He responds that sleeping outside is easy for him, noting that this is luxury as compared to enduring frozen wastelands. He adds that he will also keep watch overnight, recalling a month of being hunted in snowfields without rest. Despite everything he says, the princess refuses, insisting he should not push himself so hard. They argue back and forth until he eventually gives in. Still, he feels a hint of regret, as earning their trust had been his intention. At the same time, the two fear sleeping defenseless near him, worrying he might kill them in their sleep. One morning, the princess steps out of the tent drained, having barely slept due to constant anxiety. She notices the old man looks equally worn out, and is clearly starving. Seeing them, the barbarian suddenly asks if they are hungry, remarking that it is expected after missing proper meals and asking them to wait briefly. The princess stares in disbelief when he announces he will cook for them. Soon after, he pours oil into a pan and places it over the fire while calmly preparing the ingredients. Both she and Aaron remain frozen in shock, unable to accept that a barbarian could know how to cook. Disturbed, the old man asks whether he learned cooking long ago. The boy casually replies that it is merely a hobby. He explains that in the snowfields, survival meant eating raw meat and monster blood. Working with those brutal ingredients, he taught himself to cook despite the risks. He remembers how difficult it was to light fires and prepare meals in such deadly conditions. Still, after countless failures, he eventually succeeded. Now he is confident he can cook under any circumstances. He completes a flawless shrimp pasta and presents it before them. He stares silently at the dish, even though it looks perfectly appetizing. Princess declines, claiming she is fine and dislikes cooked meals. She pulls out dried meat instead and insists on eating only that. Following her lead, the old man quickly agrees to do the same. Confused, the boy asks if they prefer jerky and remarks that he will eat alone then. Princess wishes to join him, but cannot bring herself to trust a barbarian yet. Time passes, and by the third night of travel, she twists restlessly inside the tent, worn down by exhaustion and hunger. The old man watches her closely, worried about her condition. He realizes they have endured 3 days without proper food. He blames himself inwardly, knowing how hard this must be for someone raised in comfort. The princess offers a weak smile, softly saying she is fine and apologizing for troubling him. He bows his head with concern and tells her there is nothing to apologize for. She gently asks about his condition, noting that guarding all night must have exhausted him. Aaron shrugs it off, joking that elderly men hardly sleep anyway. As she finally falls asleep, he remains awake watching over her, thinking that he would gladly give his life to protect her. The following day, the boy busies himself by the fire, grilling meat and fish. The pair sit apart, quietly chewing on raw meat. The sight becomes unbearable for the princess. She suddenly stands and announces she needs a moment alone. The barbarian innocently asks if she is heading to the restroom, startling her and earning a sharp rebuke. Realizing his blunder, he quickly apologizes. This apology shocks her, as barbarians are not known for remorse. She silently walks into the forest, while the other two watch without speaking. The old man worries silently about his princess. Noticing this, the boy calmly remarks that he understands their distrust but reminds them he is their assigned escort. As he turns the meat, he adds that he is human as well and capable of emotional pain. Aaron is taken aback and lowers his gaze, his head bowed in shame, as he admits understanding. Yahello returns to cooking and offers him a plate of grilled venison. The old man's eyes widen at the dish resembling fine dining, and he hesitates nervously before eating. Meanwhile, the princess sits alone beside a stream, overwhelmed by misery. Her hunger becomes unbearable and she reluctantly eats the dried meat. Weakness sends pain through her legs, leaving her utterly drained and near collapse. Still, she forces herself onward, thinking of the old man and deciding to stay strong for him. Yet as she makes her way back, she freezes in shock at the scene before her. The barbarian and the old man sit together, sharing the cooked meat he prepared. The old man devours the food with such enthusiasm that he seems unaware of anything else. She calls out sharply, startling him completely. He drops the meat and leaps up in panic, shouting that it is all a misunderstanding. Before he can explain himself, she steps closer, reminding him of their promise to remain cautious around barbarians and protect each other. Aaron suddenly interrupts her, saying that this barbarian may not be as dangerous as they originally believe. Hearing this leaves her confused, while at the same time, the boy speaks up, asking her to calm down for a moment. He reasons that their rejection of his cooking and divided night watch stem from their inability to trust him. Aaron feels a quiet sense of guilt, admitting inwardly that he misjudged things, while the princess nervously tries to deny it. The boy carefully considers the situation, searching for a way to mend what went wrong. He thinks about the severe prejudice against barbarians in this world, realizing that as someone from the white snowfields he knows little of its roots, yet he assumes barbarians elsewhere must have committed terrible acts to earn such hatred. He understands that even if he claimed not to be a barbarian now, they would never accept it, when suddenly an idea flashes through his mind. Smile forms as he steps forward and announces that there has been a misunderstanding, leaving both of them staring at him in confusion. With confidence, the boy declares that he is not truly a barbarian. He cleverly explains that while he was technically born one, he was never raised as such. Both of them are left utterly stunned. They simply stare at him, unsure how to react. The boy explains that about a week after his birth, his entire tribe was wiped out. He claims that an adventurer discovered him and took him in. All the while, he admits internally that he is inventing the story on the spot. He reasons that a carefully timed lie can act like medicine, meaning that although he was born a barbarian, he grew up as a civilized person. Hearing this, the princess begins to relax slightly. Yahello adds that he knows it is difficult to accept, but hopes she will eventually see that he is no different from them. He knows his explanation is nonsense, yet he expects it to stir sympathy, which it does. The princess slowly realizes how unfair she had been in rejecting his kindness, all because she believed he was a barbarian. Embarrassment colors her face as she softly apologizes. She admits that she never fully trusted him until now. Rather than reacting angrily, he offers her a warm smile and tells her it is alright. That gentle response dissolves the tension, and relief is clear on her face. Yahello hides a faint, triumphant smile, feeling the moment went as planned. Her guilt deepens for doubting someone so kind, and the boy reaches out, telling her she can trust him from now on. The princess freezes briefly, then she smiles back, and quietly agrees. As this unfolds, a mysterious figure watches them from the trees, revealed to be the Tower Master seen earlier. Though he observes them with his special eye, they are too distant to hear, and he is shocked that someone like Yahello could exist among barbarians. He wonders what kind of land the White Wasteland must be to produce such composed and civilized warriors. Troubled by the thought, he decides to move closer, stepping forward cautiously. Suddenly, the boy sharpens his senses and turns toward him. The Tower Master freezes in alarm, unsure if he has truly been detected. The princess notices the sudden change in his expression and asks what is wrong. Only, he tells her someone is nearby and instructs her not to move. In an instant, he closes the distance and appears above the Tower Master like a predatory hunter. The Tower Master's eyes widen in disbelief. He hastily erects a wall of fire, but it proves useless. The barbarian smashes through the barrier, sending fragments flying everywhere. Panic floods the Tower Master's mind as he screams internally that this should not be possible. The shield had withstood even siege weapons, yet it shattered instantly, and the next moment, he finds himself slammed to the ground like a captured criminal. Barbarian warns him coldly that any foolish move will cost him his neck. Trapped, the Tower Master blurts out that he actually admires him. Confused, the boy asks if he is referring to him. The man quickly confirms and asks his name, then introduces himself as Patrick. Moments later, the barbarian lifts him effortlessly and carries him back toward the tent. Meanwhile, the man wonders if Cain had once been just as overwhelming. The princess questions Yahello about the stranger, explains that the man was following them, got caught, and is now claiming to be a fan. This explanation only deepens her confusion. The man then says he has always dreamed of becoming a powerful adventurer, and that he sees the barbarian as someone to aspire to, claiming he once witnessed him assisting inquisitors against demons. In truth, every word is a lie, as the Tower Master merely wants to get closer to the barbarian. Hearing this, the boy asks again if that is truly the only reason he followed them. The Tower Master smiles innocently and insists it is, saying he could not resist. Even so, the boy decides he cannot simply release him without knowing if he is dangerous. Suddenly, inspiration strikes, and a sly grin spreads across his face. One of the greatest mages in history, the master of the magic tower, who possessed a lich body, had disguised himself as a man named Patrick to observe the barbarian. However, his plans failed, leaving him bound and standing helplessly before the boy. After confirming the ropes are secure, he announces that it is time to move on. The group proceeds along the forest path, dragging Patrick along against his will. For the first time, he is close enough to truly study the barbarian. He finally understands what Cain had meant. Yahello operates on an entirely different level of speed and strength, able to shatter magic using sheer physical power. All of this makes him question whether the barbarian might be hero class. Meanwhile, the princess softly calls out to him, and he stops. Turning back, he calmly asks if she is ready to tell him everything. The question shocks her as she realizes he already knew. The boy explains that it was easy to tell they were hiding something. However, he says he understands her situation and knows trusting a stranger is difficult. The princess apologizes and admits she wants to explain everything. Afterward, he can choose whether he wishes to continue escorting her. Before she can begin speaking, he stops her, warning that someone else is nearby. Moments later, armored knights emerge from the trees as everyone watches. Princess looks startled, as if she recognizes them. The knight commander bows and introduces himself as Lucien de Edenheimer. Facing the princess, he says they have been desperately searching for her to bring her home. Instead of relief, worry spreads across her face. The commander turns to the boy, revealing she is the first princess of the Luden Kingdom, and explains she recently fled the castle when questioned, mistaking the barbarian for a hired escort. He declares they will take responsibility from here. Suddenly, the princess refuses outright, and says she will not go with him. In a sharp voice, she demands to know who he really is. The commander is taken aback, and asks what she means. Clenching her fists, she repeats the question with more intensity. This time, he gives his full name, but before he can finish, she screams that she does not know him, accusing him of being an imposter who replaced the real commander. He claims the same thing happened to her friends, and even her parents. The Tower Master finds the situation fascinating, and checks the knight's identity himself. He confirms the man is human, making the situation even stranger. Meanwhile, the princess continues accusing him of plotting to consume her and seize the kingdom, while the commander silently watches her, as she screams about vengeance. He turns to the other knights and remarks that she has lost her sanity. This only fuels her anger further. He asks whether she truly believes that everyone else in the castle changed except her. She hesitates, momentarily speechless. The knight commander reaches out his hand and asks her to return with him. Princess stiffens completely, yet inside her thoughts race. She refuses to let everything end here before he can come any closer. The boy suddenly steps between them, catching her completely off guard. The commander sternly orders him to move aside. He declines calmly, maintaining a respectful tone, left with no alternatives. The knight commander lunges forward. The boy seizes him by the helmet, and hurls him away as effortlessly as tossing a ball. The surrounding knights watch in horror as their leader is sent flying. In fairness, the barbarian was simply defending his employer, making his actions justified. Regaining his footing, the commander challenges him, asking if he truly believes her story. The barbarian responds that a mercenary must trust the one who hired him, for reasons she cannot explain. Those words sent a jolt through the princess. The knight commander scoffs, claiming they are all delusional. Smiling faintly, the boy remarks that the commander is hardly in a position to say that. He then turns back toward the princess, points out that the knights arrived without any detectable presence, meaning they appeared in the forest out of nowhere. This revelation surprises even the Tower Master, who sensed the same anomaly. The boy turns to the knights and asks how they managed to appear so suddenly. Rather than respond, the commander ignores the question entirely. He simply repeats that they came for the princess. Barbarian realizes they have no explanation. He then states that he will personally escort her to the kingdom of Dinian. The princess lowers her gaze at his words. Even within her own castle, no one had believed her claims. The knight commander accepts that words alone will not resolve this. Tattle reaches the same conclusion and tells everyone to give him space. Men standing before him are the kingdom's elite knights, even after they draw their blades. He remains standing with a confident grin. Meanwhile, the Tower Master carefully studies this scene. He notes that most soldiers are second-rate, capable of basic mystic control, but their commander stands on a higher tier, and suddenly he orders an attack. The knights charge forward with lethal intent. The boy plants himself firmly like an unmovable peat, and begins crushing them using nothing but his fists. Each strike releases shockwaves, throwing multiple knights backward. Even after watching his men get blasted aside, the commander still commands the remaining knights to advance. At that moment, the barbarian grabs two knights by their helmets. He spins them violently, slamming them into others as collateral damage. While his focus shifts, the commander sneaks up from behind, seizing the opening. Watching this unfold, the princess screams a warning, but to her disbelief, the boy bites clean through the commander's sword like it is nothing. Witnessing such a terrifying feat, the commander chooses the only sensible option. He orders an immediate retreat. As the knights withdraw, the princess asks if he is injured, and he assures her he is unharmed. He also promises to finish the escort mission, but first wants the full truth. Hearing this, she exhales deeply and agrees to explain everything as they return to the tent. The Tower Master reflects on aura, believing it to be condensed mysticism, a force capable of slicing steel and tearing magic apart. Simply put, aura should be impossible to neutralize. However, what he witnessed shattered that belief, as a barbarian stopped aura with his teeth, and not a single mark appeared on his skin. The group settles near the fire while the boy again asks what truly happened. The old man explains that their kingdom has been completely replaced. By the time they realize something was wrong, it had already fallen. The barbarian asks if this is why they escaped. Aaron admits they would have been replaced as well if they stayed. His voice shakes as he adds that this distortion began almost a year ago. At that moment, Cottle's expression shifts. He wonders if this is coincidence, recalling similar words from an inquisitor. During their last job, she mentioned abnormal dungeon activity and strange beings appearing. All of it began around a year ago, though he dismissed it at the time. He also remembers something unsettling said by a man he met in the snowfields. His thoughts are cut short, as the old man continues. Once they sensed something was wrong, they asked the court mages to investigate. No cause was ever found, only the people themselves said change. When Cattle asks how they noticed the change, The old man lowers his head and says it is difficult to explain. However, being near those people felt unbearable despite their normal behavior. The boy asks if it was purely instinct. The old man admits he doubted it too until he experienced it himself. His duty was overseeing the castle servants. One servant was a shy girl named Kasai. She once feared ghost stories intensely, but suddenly stopped reacting at all. At first, he assumed she had simply grown out of her fear. Something later convinced him otherwise. Cassie was tasked with cleaning statues, and due to her frailty, she feared they might topple and crush her. However, one day the statue actually fell toward her. She narrowly avoided being crushed, yet her only concern afterward was punishment. At that moment, he realized the girl was no longer Kasai. Though her behavior looked the same, he sensed she was someone else entirely. He tested this with others and discovered most had already changed. That is why they fled, fearing they would become the same. The boy still questions why they chose the Danian kingdom when other refuges exist. The princess explains that Danian's king can issue a human declaration. Long ago, humans lived alongside other races, until one man sought a kingdom exclusively for humans. He appealed to an unknown god, and in return, gained the power to distinguish humans from non-humans. That man founded the Danian kingdom, and his bloodline inherited this ability. The boy smiles, unused that such legends are real here. He guesses they plan to use this power as proof and agrees it is wise. The princess looks at him and asks if he truly accepts this. He reassures her that their agreement remains unchanged. Hearing this, she thanks him sincerely and promises to reward him for completing the mission. Barbarian gives a relaxed smile and says he is actually excited to see how this turns out. The old man, however, reacts in a completely opposite way. Much later, once both of them have drifted off to sleep, the boy remains awake with the Tower Master, who asks whether he truly believes the princess story. He admits he is uncertain, but says it could still be true. Tower Master points out that the knights he fought were undeniably human, yet this is something the boy was already aware of. To make things worse, his actions have effectively angered an entire kingdom. Even assuming the princess is telling the truth, he could still face serious trouble just for being involved at all. The man asks whether he truly accepted the job solely to act as their guard. After a brief pause, the boy stands and admits that escorting them was not his only reason for being here. He explains that passing up such an intriguing story would be far too great a loss. The Tower Master begins to sweat as he realizes this entire ordeal is merely entertainment to the monster before him.